Good morning. Good morning. It's the beginning of day 6. It's Tuesday, March 28th. I can't believe we began this month in the Murdaugh trial and we are ending this month in the Paltrow ski crash trial. Is this what any of us intended? No. What did we hear yesterday? Well, the plaintiff testified to a very different version of events than Gwyneth Paltrow, that he heard a scream and was hit very hard from behind and sent flying into the snow and lost consciousness. We also heard the beginning of the defendant Gwyneth Paltrow's case with two employees from Deer Valley who testified. One being the ski instructor who was with Gwyneth Paltrow's children on the run with her when this crash happened, and the other being the ski patrol who took Terry Sanderson down, did all of the orientation tests, initially noted that he was disoriented and said that by the time 2 hours later he left in a private vehicle, that he was okay. That Mr. Ramon, who testified as the first witness in this trial, never identified himself to Ski Patrol as a witness to the crash, and no one ever told Ski Patrol that Terry Sanderson was unconscious for any period of time, though Mr. Ramon now says he was unconscious for minutes face down in the snow, and well, that amount of time shifted a little bit, didn't it? So the stories we still have are very different. At the end of the day yesterday, we heard much complaint about the timing of the case. Each side has the same amount of trial time, including their closing arguments. The plaintiff has gone with all of their witnesses except finishing up the cross-examination of Sanderson. The defense is bringing in their experts today, and it looks like Gwyneth Paltrow kids were scheduled but will now be testifying. Well, not really. Their depositions will be read into the record, which is always so boring to watch. So, with all of that, we are going to get started today. Court said they were starting just about now, and we are going to go forward with that. Good morning, chat. Thank you so much. I sleep with my hair in a bun, and this is what it literally looks like in the morning. I'm coming in with hot water and lemon. We are going to go forward. So, with all of that, this is what we're covering today. And I need to go set out notifications because I didn't have a chance to do it. I recorded the podcast late last night regarding Murdaugh and maybe slept a little bit more than I intended to this morning. Is Emily a little tired? Yes. Yes, ma'am, I am, but that's okay. Let's roll the intro and then get into some of your questions. All right. All right. Let's go. Hey there, I'm Emily D. Baker, the internet's go-to legal analyst, breaking down the legal side of the pop culture and entertainment stories we can't stop talking about. I'm a big fan of the cursey words. I've been a licensed attorney for over 17 years, but this is not legal advice. This is where the law nerds unite to talk about facts, not... Let's get into it. All right, y'all. This has not come up yet, and the live news page has a lot of news that I am just not processing at the moment. We'll get there another day. So, with all of that, we are just waiting for the judge to take the bench. What's funny is the judge said yesterday at the end of the day that they would be starting with the attorneys right around now, and they are normally pretty good about that. All of our lovely law nerds in Utah shared with us yesterday how bad the weather is. I hope the weather is better for the jury and all the parties getting into Utah today. But yesterday, there was quite a lot of weather that was an issue. Marianne said, I keep saying that the trial has been reduced to 300,000. Is that correct? I don't know where that's coming from because I have pulled both of the plaintiffs' uh, complaints in this case. My brain is going to be this way all day long. I have pulled both of the plaintiffs' complaints in this case. I have not seen where they have reduced it. I have seen the charges get reduced. I have seen the punitive damages get removed from this case. There are only compensatory damages. Could legal fees be capped at that amount? It's possible, but I have not seen that. But we are not generally capping compensatory damages. So the plaintiff in their opening statement asked that the jury value the damages at $3.26 million. That's what they asked in their opening statement. So I am working off of what these lawyers asked for. I will be interested to see what the jury comes back with. So I do not think this is a $300,000 case to Gwyneth Paltrow, because it is very clear that this plaintiff is asking for more. He is asking for over $3 million. And while we're here, hold on, I can pull that up and see, because other than the compensatory damage or the punitive damages, the damages that punish you for doing shit that's outside of the common course of a polite and civilized society, we have him asking in his first amended complaint, though, for 2 charges, though one got yeeted, and I covered this on the Emily Show podcast. He doesn't ask for any specific amount of damages. Emily, is your screen sharing ready? No, it's not, because we're professionals here. Look, I promise you this week's podcast is really good. It was worth the late night. Come here, first amended complaint. Pull up and be a responsible complaint. All right, let's get into this fact real quick. Hey, there you are. All right, we're going to fact around. Hold on. Because every time I we're not even going to say it because it just encourages it. All right, this is his first amended complaint. One of his causes of actions got yeeted, thrown out by the court. That was for negligent infliction of emotional distress. The judge didn't find that the elements were there for that, that there was no negligent infliction of emotional distress. His request for relief is non-economic damages in an amount to be proven at trial, including pain and suffering, loss of enjoyment of life, emotional distress, disfigurement, and such damages allowed by law. So those are the non-economic damages that he's asking for. Economic damages in an amount to be proven at trial, including past and future medical expenses, life care, out-of-pocket, and other economic damages, prejudgment interest and damages, punitive damages have been removed, costs of the suit, and attorney's fees. I don't know if attorney's fees are capped. So, Peter, I think that's Chargos also searched the 300,000. He was unable to find written order or statute that supported a limit. Here's what I think happened. I think one person reported it and everyone else started reporting it. And then the lawyers all started saying, wait, that doesn't mean anything. But the attorney's fees might be capped. Sorry, my glasses are dirty. The attorney's fees might very well be capped. That happens in a lot of jurisdictions. So the attorney fees might be capped. But all of the economic damages and sorry, I don't know where the rogue reference to Can't Hardly Wait came out, but it sure just did. So the I'm only going to be able to say it that way now. The non-economic damages in this case,
good morning,
are the pain and suffering and all the rest. He's asking for 3.26.
Are the parties ready for the jury?
Disfigurement.
They're all assembled and ready to go.
Disfigurement is a common part. So it is part of the standard law. Let's hear what they have
Defendants
to say.
ready?
Yes.
Okay. You can go ahead and bring the jury in.
Bring the jury! Yes! This is my joy for the day. I needed the dopamine. And maybe a green juice. Gwyneth, what are you drinking? Do I need to drink green? I mean, maybe that's what we need by the end of this trial, is just a green juice. Finally! We have brought the jury.
Let the record reflect that counsel are all present, defendants present.
I am overjoyed. All right. That's not what I meant to do. I'm going to go look for a feed that has A, our closed captions, and B, is just a clean feed, easy to use. The problem is a lot of feeds have not picked back up in court yet, so we're just going to do this.
Mr. Sykes, you're still doing your cross-examination of Mr. Graff. Okay. Mr. Graff in the room? Okay. Could you ask Mr. Graff to come on in?
All right. We're going to get Mr. Graff back on the stand this morning. This is the continuation of cross-examination. They started court a touch
Mr. Graff,
early
could
today.
you come and be resworn?
And they started
morning.
court early today mostly due to Owen's
Do you
complaining
swear
that
that
he
the
says it's not
testimony you are
complaining,
about
that's
to give in the
totally
case now before
complaining.
the court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Yes.
Well, the
Thank
clerk
you.
is nice and loud. We
Go
can
ahead and
hear the
take a seat.
clerk. So. Alrighty. Susan asked, did anyone else see Sanderson's press conference? It looks exactly like a money grab. We will hopefully see it. This judge looks tired today. This judge is exhausted with these attorneys, I'm sure. Are Fred and George napping together?
We're
Fred
just
and
waiting
George
for the jury.
are asleep together back on the chair. They do that often. They cuddle up together. So with all of that, Gwyneth is never late. Gwyneth shows up on Gwyneth time. No, she waits in the holding room in the back of the courtroom until the jury is about to come in and then comes into court. I believe it's so she's not on camera in court. I'm not going to criticize it because the plaintiff was barely here for half of the trial. So Gwyneth going to do what Gwyneth going to do, and the other parties are going to do what they're going to do, and I'm sure there's a reason for it. But the judge doesn't have a problem with it, and with that, if the judge doesn't have a problem with it, then I'm not going to have a problem with it. You know what I have a bigger problem with? What I have a bigger problem with is the AP trying to copy claim the streams. Hey, AP, stop making me have to dispute copyright claims. It's dumb. It's a pool feed of a trial. Are you also copy claiming all of the other news organizations that are pool feeding the trial? Because I can't imagine that you are. Stop it. Just stop it. Just all of the stop it. This cross-examination was promised to be short. For all of our replay crew, we will timestamp the different parts of the trial down below. For those of you that are new, go ahead and like and subscribe. We were very close yesterday, but we are very close again.
Mr. Graff
To
was just sworn in by the
112,000.
clerk, so he would be ready to go. Mr.
Oh, it's
Sykes,
not
you may
helpful when that
proceed.
freezes.
Thank you.
I hate that.
Mr. Graff, we talked yesterday about, this is Plaintiff's Exhibit 3, and the defense has one. Can you see that in front of you?
I can.
Okay. This is the ski report
And we are right back into
Instructor's
cross on day
comments.
6. This is promised to be a
filed by
10-minute
Eric
cross.
Christensen, correct?
Yes.
I do not
Okay.
see the plaintiff back in court
And-
today.
You reviewed it. You reviewed it?
Yes,
Up there.
I have.
Okay.
Nope, that's the other lawyer. That's Bueller.
Now, up top here, can I have the pointer?
If I see the plaintiff, I'll let you know. He might not be in court today. At all.
See, there's a time here, 11:55 a.m.,
I see that.
okay? Can we assume that's a fairly accurate time?
Yes.
And that Whitney
Mr. Graff
Smith, when she
is the
picked up,
supervisor for
Terry
the
Sanderson marked
ski
it as
patrol
12:02.
at Deer Valley.
That's when the dispatch came in, was 12:02.
Dispatch, okay, 12:02. Now, you noticed here, name of student. This one has been whited out, but on one that we have, it has Gwyneth Paltrow's name there, correct?
I don't know which one you have.
Well, the one I have has it whited out, but the defense has her name in there,
I see this one that's whited out.
yeah. And
like, "This
this
is all
was
I
a falsehood, correct? The name of the student wasn't Gwyneth Paltrow, was it?
I'm not sure the name of the student.
Well, Eric Christensen's student was Moses Martin.
This is the cross for Eric
So,
Christiansen.
if he writes
I'm teasing.
name of student Gwyneth
Christensen.
Paltrow, that's incorrect, right?
I believe this form is commenting on Gwyneth Paltrow.
Yeah, as a student, but she wasn't his student, right?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Now, would you agree that the crash, the ski crash, was serious enough to warrant someone like Eric Christensen writing a formal report? Correct?
It was serious enough that he made comments about it at the end of the day.
That-
Is that a yes to my question?
no, it's not.
What
it's,
was your question again?
Serious enough to write a report?
It's a kinda.
Okay, thanks. And you recognize that he claimed here twice that he didn't see it. Right here, I didn't see it. And then A little lower.
Wait, go back.
Did you witness the accident? No. Do you see that?
Yes, I see
Okay.
that.
Now, despite the fact that he didn't see it, and Gwyneth was not his student, he blamed the male skier anyway. Correct?
This is the cross-examination that we need of Eric Christensen. I love the chat keeping time. You know that I have time blindness.
He blamed the male skier.
This is the same
For the-
thing
for the
we
crash,
saw
correct?
from the
Now,
defense
did
in
that
Murdoch.
bother you?
Is there a question?
They
Yeah,
asked.
there was.
They asked the person
He
whose
blamed
job
the
it's
male
not.
You allowed the witness to answer.
This is a
About
very
the
simple
thing.
question. Okay.
Oh,
He
don't
blamed
snap
the
back
male
at
skier.
James.
Answer the question.
Counsel, we'll come for you if you snap back at James.
Yes.
Thank you. Yes, you
Well,
can
that
answer, or
doesn't
yes,
answer
he
the
blamed the male
question.
James-
skier.
James
Yes
is our
to the
point of
judge's
sanity
question.
in this
I can't
whole
answer your
trial.
question. I'm just reading before
Okay.
I answer the question.
Exactly. Ask the
Just
instructor
read
these
additional
questions.
comments there.
I did. Yeah, I don't know that I see blame there.
First thing male skier stated was that she appeared right in front of him, thus
Remember-
admitting he was the uphill skier.
This attorney and
She
this
never saw him because he
party
came in from behind. Now,
have done
you don't consider
depositions
that to be a
together.
blame?
I consider that to be just what it says, that
Terry
thus
Sanderson not
admitting
in
he
court
was
this
the
morning.
uphill skier.
Okay. Did it bother you that now at the time you were in charge of all ski instructors, weren't you?
No.
No.
What was your title?
He was in
ski
charge of ski
patrol manager?
patrol.
Ski patrol manager.
Correct.
Okay.
That's different.
Ski patrol manager. Did it bother you that a Deer Valley employee, an instructor, whose report you read, blamed the male skier even
This is a
though
problem today.
he didn't see it? Does that
Sorry,
bother
y'all.
you at all? At the time?
I don't see blame here. I
Okay.
just see thus admitting that he was the uphill skier.
Now, did it bother you, Mr. Graff, that
Oh no, that's me. I've been
On this
freezing. It's been
report-
freezing a little bit.
he never got the male skier's contact
He
information?
should have just asked.
No.
Yeah.
He's-
You're
this is-
sitting there a day or two
They
later.
can object to all of
testify
this.
about
This
it,
witness isn't in charge
and
of
you
the ski
read this
instructors.
report,
He's in charge of this
and there's
ski
a
patrol.
crash that was serious enough to haul someone down off the mountain on a toboggan.
Well, he didn't know that from that report.
And this man who's writing this report never gets the male skier's contact information. That didn't bother you?
That didn't bother me.
Did it bother you that Mr. Christensen never gave Gwyneth Paltrow's contact information? That bother you?
That didn't bother me.
Did it bother you that Mr. Christensen never gave his contact information to anybody?
He's like, I'm not bothered, sir.
None of these bothered me because at the time,
I'm not
everybody
bothered.
skied away with the assumption that everyone was fine.
Right, not bothered.
Okay, so your understanding was that everyone skied away, even though a ski patrol person named Whitley Smith hauled Terry Sanderson off the mountain in a toboggan.
Well, not
And
at
in
that
your
point.
definition, that's everyone skiing away because they're all fine.
Dr. Pete brought me coffee.
Whitney Smith responded to Mr. Sanderson in a different location from where the collision occurred. So they all skied away.
Now, let me ask you this. This claims here that a man with 4 documented broken ribs, 2 of which were separated, broken, not just cracked, but separated.
Not just cracked.
4 documented broken ribs.
It's very
Said
early in
he
the
was
morning for
okay
this type
to
of
2
yelling.
other ski
for me.
patrollers that allegedly came by. Did that bother you at all?
I do jump. I've talked about the
That's
fact
my
that
understanding of
I
what
do have
happened.
CPSD, so I
Did
do.
it
I
bother
do.
you
I do jump
that-
out of my skin at things.
Allegedly,
It is not a response that
This,
I
yellow one here?
can control, but it does.
But a
Things
patroller
send me
came
out of
by
my
and checked on
skin
everyone.
easily.
Did it bother you that there was no log of that patroller?
No.
Didn't bother
Oh,
you?
seashell, I'm gonna grab that.
So nothing
glass
so
for
far
later.
has
I love
bothered
it.
you, right.
Oh my god, I feel like I'm being yelled
These are
at.
just the facts.
Everyday life at Deer Valley, right?
They're the facts, sir.
Yes.
Okay. Now, did it bother you
He's not gonna get a rise out of this man. Oh, good. Yeah, it's way
see
too
this
early
right
for
here
all of
where my
this.
cursor is?
Yes.
The coughing does seem better
That
this
Eric
morning,
Christensen,
which is helpful.
after
This is not
this
Bueller.
crash,
Bueller's the other one. I forget this one's name.
goes to lunch with one of the most famous actresses in the world and her family. Did that bother you at all?
No, I think that's standard practice for ski instructors.
Not
Did
bothered.
it bother you that 3 hours after lunch or so, that he then writes his report? That bother
Still
you?
not
Did that concern
bothered.
you at all?
No, that's typical of what happens.
Did it ever occur to you that this instructor might be covering up bad conduct by himself to protect Miss Paltrow, a big spender at Deer Valley? Did that ever concern you or bother you?
No.
Oh,
Did it ever
keeps
concern you or
freezing.
bother you that he might be covering up bad conduct by
This is
Gwyneth
an
Paltrow?
issue. I'm gonna have to switch feeds. This keeps freezing. I don't know why.
No.
Didn't you basically wink and a nod at
What?
this bad conduct? Wink and a nod at it.
Can you define that?
You know what wink and a
What?
nod means?
What are you
No.
talking about?
Well, actually, you did, because we had a deposition on another case. But wink and a nod, as I'm using it, means you see something wrong, but you just wink at it and go on and don't do anything about it. Isn't that what you did here today?
Absolutely not.
Okay? Why wasn't this instructor terminated for filing a false report?
This is his report. There's nothing in it that's false.
Isn't it true that you believe he wasn't fired because he did nothing wrong? He did nothing wrong.
Correct.
Okay? And there was no cover-up by Deer Valley, correct?
Absolutely not.
Thank you. No further questions, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sykes.
Mr. Sykes.
I just have one question, Your Honor.
I like Wanda Sykes better. James, the chat is going to lose its mind. James, you can't bend over in front of the
See you
camera.
again, Mr. Graff. Thank
Sir.
you for coming back.
Sir.
Very nice of you.
The
It's okay. It was cooperating yesterday.
it's a new
I
day,
think I just need to
James.
go back to the old technology again. Okay, so
We all felt attacked by that comment as well.
I just want to ask you, Mr. Graff,
One question you said.
one question.
Excuse me 1 second, I've got my computer.
oh yeah, go ahead.
All right, Mr. Sykes. James has one
I just
question.
want to ask you, Mr. Graff, a quick question about the patrol log. Published this, we looked at it yesterday with you, Defendant's Exhibit 26A. You were asked questions, not today, but before you left the stand yesterday by plaintiff's counsel about this bad boot entry here. Do you see that?
I do see that.
And do you remember questions about how that was sort of a minor issue, and he was asking why that would be logged, but other major issues might not be?
Yes.
So, can you explain what is a bad boot, and what would it require of a patroller who came upon that kind of a problem?
You know, I'm not exactly sure what this bad boot issue was, but it could be that a buckle was broken. It could be that,
Someone had a bad
as
boot.
funny as it sounds, could be they were on the wrong feet. You know, you see things like that. So there was some issue that Jess responded to, and it was as simple as a bad boot.
And might it require a toboggan down the hill if someone had a malfunction that they
You
couldn't
said
get down
one.
the hill?
Yes.
Liar!
And then this section here, 1202, again, I'll use this little laser pointer. 1202 here, it over in the nature of the injury discussion, it says skier collision and disorientation. Do you know
I'm like
who
trying
wrote
to
that?
zoom on my computer.
I don't know who wrote it. Whoever is manning the dispatch is the person who puts these entries in.
Okay, so would it be fair to say then that it would not be Whitney Smith that wrote that?
It would
Yes,
not be
Steve.
Whitney
It was a-
Smith.
it was a
They're
bad boot.
transcribing what Whitney Smith is saying over the radio. So Whitney Smith was on scene 2 minutes after the call came in. And then whoever was there wrote down what she said.
Okay.
And she said that she was on scene of a skier collision with the patient experiencing disorientation.
Right, and the jury has heard what her experience was, and you don't know anything further than you've already told us about that, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right, no
All
further
right, you are
questions.
excused. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm gonna
Is there a possibility the witness may be called back?
Not from us.
Yeah, very small.
Okay.
James said
So
not
you're
from
still
us.
under, I guess, this trial, so please don't discuss the case with any of the other witnesses. Thank
I'm
you.
going to switch feeds real quick. And I've got to switch some setup things around. You should still be able to hear court.
Mr. Owens, is your next witness ready?
My computer's being
Yes,
wonky.
our next witness is Dr. Scher.
Dr.
We-
Scher.
We will need an easel and to set up for him to draw, and we may need a second to do that.
Okay.
Okay.
Owens, don't tell James what to do.
Go ahead and set up.
So let me switch feeds real quick. Let's see. They're getting set up.
Dr. Scher,
The court's
good
probably
morning.
going to give a
Come on forward here and be sworn in as a
stretch
witness.
break. He's coming up to be sworn in.
Do you swear that the
Darn
testimony
it.
you are about to give in the case
I'm
now
looking
before
for
the
one that
court
doesn't
will
cut
be
away
the
to
truth, the whole
news.
truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Thank you, Bingalina.
And then take a seat here and adjust your microphone, and then please. Next witness ready?
Yes,
All right.
our next,
Oh,
okay.
this feed's a little bit behind, so we're going to stick with where we were for a moment because that feed was a little bit behind.
IRV, ING. Last name is SCHER.
Thank you for being with us here today, Dr. Scher.
Trying to keep ourselves up to
Um,
date.
Let's begin by just asking you what you understand your role here to be today.
What?
To
There we
teach the
go.
jury about biomechanical engineering related to snow
lost-
sports and particular skiing.
There we go.
And do you have an understanding of what plaintiff's biomechanical expert, Dr. Boehm, has said about this case?
I've read his deposition testimony and his trial testimony, so I do understand what he's saying in the case, yes.
Okay, and you have opinions about his testimony, is that right?
That is correct. I've analyzed his biomechanical engineering analysis.
So the jury will get to hear your response to his analysis.
Exactly.
Okay, great. So before we get to that, let's talk about your background and training so they understand why
James is clear and easy to follow.
you and not me are
he's
on the
so
stand.
much easier to follow.
So where did
No,
you go to school?
Ski expert.
I did my Bachelor's of Science in Engineering at the University of
Oh, yes.
Pennsylvania. I majored in mechanical engineering and applied mechanics. And then
Who knew
after
you could be an
undergrad,
engineer
I
and then
moved
talk about
west,
skiing?
And I got my master's and my PhD at UC Berkeley in the mechanical engineering
So-
department. And I had two disciplines that I specialized in.
We have now entered
One
the
was
battle of
called
the experts.
dynamic systems. That's how objects move in space when forces are applied to them.
I bet you
And
can
the
see
other
that in your
is
brain, right?
biomechanical
Because
engineering.
some of us can't.
And that is the application of physics and engineering to the human body, in particular, looking at how people get injured and how to prevent injuries.
What's interesting is he's
And
the
did you
battle
do a
expert.
PhD thesis?
He's
I did.
And can you explain what you
he's
worked on?
battling
Sure.
Voldemort with the green
I
screen.
was, the
This
last
is
in the
much
line of
easier to
what we
listen
call
to because he's live.
skiologists.
He's
I
in
studied
person,
the
he's looking at the
biomechanics of
jury,
alpine skiing.
and he's not on a green background that
created
gave all
load
of us a
cells.
headache.
So those are devices that measure the forces, and I put them in between the skis and the bindings. And I had different instrumentation on skiers, And it was the first time, or at least that I'm aware of, that anyone in the scientific community was able to measure the forces and the body motions of skiers from the top of the mountain all the way down to the bottom. And I did this with beginners, people who had only skied 2 or 3 days in their whole life, all the way up to professional racers. And so that's what I got my PhD in.
And this is actually measurements
his
on the
he got his
slope
PhD in
as
skiing.
people are skiing.
That's right, exactly. Yeah, I'm measuring the forces applied to the person and their body motions as they're skiing. Well, and falling. We did have falls as well.
Right, and so this is not just calculations in.
Did you work with
semi-workout,
Apple on
but
their
you're
fall
actually out in
detection on the
field
watch?
Looking at
Hands-on work, which is quite difficult when you have electronics and snow and water. It was challenging for sure.
And do you also
Chad, don't
do
think
any
I don't
teaching?
see you. I see you.
I did teach. After I graduated with my PhD, I did a small postdoc in the biology department.
Just a
at
little bit of a
Berkeley.
postdoc.
And then after that, while I was working for a company,
We-
I taught at the University of Southern California. I was in the physical therapy department.
The other
on
USC.
the medical campus, and I taught intro to biomechanics, and I also did research there at USC. And then I moved.
Not
I
the-
now
not the
live in
other one.
Seattle, and I'm at the University of Washington. I have an affiliate professorship there. I'm an associate
Sir,
professor.
how have you had
at the
time to do
University
all of this?
Washington, And I occasionally lecture, but mostly advise grad students.
What about professional licenses? Do you have any of those?
I'm a registered professional mechanical engineer in California, Washington.
You have to be
and Alaska.
registered? Huh.
And then in terms of professional societies, these groups of people that get together to research and work
Yes,
on a certain
this dude
field,
does
are
a
you
lot of
connected
school.
to any such organizations?
I am.
And what are those?
I am chair of a group called ASTM F27. If you've ever gone to a ski shop,
He might have a
and,
time turner. That's fair.
purchased ski equipment or rented ski equipment, and they set your bindings, what some people call DIN settings. That's based on the standards from ASTM, and I'm the chairman of that group. We also do other snow sports equipment.
I love that he's like,
I represent
so I
the
like
US
engineering and
for
I'm a
snow
nerd.
sports equipment
And I
safety,
like skiing,
at
and I'm
the
going to just
International
mash
Standards
those up.
Organization, so the ISO.
I love this.
So if you go over to Europe, you'll have the same release and retention settings for your skis. Your bindings won't pull off your skis. They use the same standards that we've developed here in the US. I'm also president of a group called the International Society for Snow Sports Safety, and that's more academic than the other two organizations I was mentioning. We call it ISSS. ISSS is the premier organization worldwide
Is it ICE?
to present and
I
publish
couldn't
your
help
snow
myself.
sports safety research. And we have members from all over the world: Switzerland, Korea,
it's snow
Norway,
sports.
obviously the US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. It's quite a great group, and it's really the group that helped develop ski binding standards.
So you do some research on the safety of snow sports like skiing, correct?
That is my main focus of my research ever since grad school, and I've continued to do that now.
And then you also evaluate cases in a litigation context, is that right?
I do. About 15%, 20% of my work is forensic work.
Kathy,
the rest
no,
is
this
research
is,
and
we
development.
are now into the experts. So the experts are going to be off of reviews.
So most of the time, are you
Ooh, does he have
doing
muffins,
research
though?
to try and improve the safety of skiers on the hill?
Excuse me, sir?
Yes, and I
They
should
want
say
to
it's
know
not
about your
just
marital
snow sports.
status
I work in other
and your
recreational
muffins.
sports areas, water sports, mountain biking, other areas too. But snow sports is my favorite.
He's like,
my
you would
passion.
call me an outdoorsy engineer.
So let's explain to the jury what biomechanical engineering is, just because we could use a refresher.
Sure. Biomechanical engineering is the application of physics and mechanical engineering to the human body. But in a forensic sense, it's what links the event to the injury.
Chad,
So if you
y'all
have some
are
type of
making me
event
giggle this
and there's
morning.
forces and
I
motions
love you the most.
in the event, in the accident, the forces are applied to a person. There's internal forces on their, like in their body at the joints or something like that. The amount of force and the amount of motion it takes to create damage to the body, that is biomechanical engineering.
And how's that different than medicine? They're both dealing with the human body, but what's the difference?
Sure, the medical field tends to take the injured person, figure out what's wrong with them, so diagnosis,
This is
and then
Gwyneth
try to get them
Paltrow's
better.
biomechanical
to treatment,
engineering
with an eventual
expert.
outcome. So
Looking at the
most
body,
medical training is
talking
after
about
the injury,
how
as
this
opposed
happened.
to what forces and
How did the
motions
injury
create the injury.
happen?
We like to think of ourselves on different sides of the injury.
they want to
Thank
look
you.
at how the injury happened.
Can biomechanical engineers determine the forces required to produce fractures of bones in the body?
Yes, there's a lot of research on that, and that's one of the main areas for biomechanical engineering.
So is there scientific literature that describes the forces needed for, say, rib fractures?
There is, yes.
And you're familiar with that literature?
I am, yes.
And let's maybe ask a specific question about that literature.
That's in your hands,
Given
James.
your knowledge of it.
You asked a
Does
specific question about the
70-year-old
literature.
man need to fall on his side with his elbow between him and the ground to cause rib fractures?
No, so there have been a
Oh.
number of scientific studies, mostly done by biomechanical engineers, but there's other scientists who have looked at this as well. And what they do is they take cadavers or portions of cadavers and they
Break
apply
bones?
forces to them. Sometimes they'll swing a pendulum into the side of a cadaver or to the front, or they'll have a plate, a very heavy weighted plate, contact the person arm
Kinda like the
down,
crash
arm
test
up,
dummy cars,
45 degrees.
but with cadavers.
Or they'll drop the cadaver in different configurations, and then they'll
If
see
you
what
donate your
injuries are
body to
produced.
science,
And so when they've done this, in particular for
Scientists are apparently
chest
going to run
impacts,
shit into it.
What we find is you can get lateral rib fractures, according to the biomechanical engineering literature. You can get lateral rib fractures with an impact to the side with your arm down or with your arm up. But you can also get
Like, I get that
lateral rib
it's
fractures
science.
from compression, so front to back compression of the chest. So if I press my chest in like this, what happens is the ribs actually bend out on the side, and that can create fractures on the side, and that's quite common as well. So rib fractures are not just from side contact, it can be from front to back compression as well.
or coughing.
So let's get to what you did in this case. So what did I ask you to do in this case?
You think they're throwing things into
Basically, you
bodies?
asked me to evaluate Dr. Bain's biomechanical engineering analysis to see if it was accurate and correct.
And what
Green
material
screen
did you
doctor.
review? I think you already mentioned you read his transcript and you watched his trial testimony. Is that right?
I did, yes.
And maybe for the jury, in case they need a reminder, he had that green screen in the back of him.
Right, just the talking head.
He's
Exactly.
speaking from Florida, I think.
We remember, sir.
And so let's
The green screen
just
was
start
awful.
with his analysis. Do you agree with it?
I do not. I do
Okay.
not agree with his analysis.
And maybe before we explain why, just give us a sense of what you understand his method and analysis to be.
Sure. As I've gone through what he testified to in his deposition and the trial, looking at his calculations and what he's done, to me, there's two parts to his analysis. The first is calculations to show that Miss Paltrow had to land on Mr. Sanderson in order to get the rib fractures that he got. And then there was a second part that basically said, because Miss Paltrow had to land on Mr.
Oh, I
Sanderson,
hate that it keeps
that could
freezing.
only
That did not happen yesterday.
with Miss Paltrow hitting him from behind. It couldn't happen any other way. It was impossible. So that's my understanding of the kind of the two parts, the main parts.
Thank you.
Really
We'll
frustrating me.
go over those in more detail. As you looked at his analysis, you read everything
This
that he
is where
read,
we're at
correct?
until I can
I
fix
did.
it.
And did you read even more than that
I had additional depositions, that's correct.
of the various people that were at the scene of the accident?
That's right.
So you're trying to determine what happened to break these ribs.
So let's get one thing out of the way. Do you agree with Dr. Bain that
He already
Mr.
said-
Sanderson's rib fractures did not occur during the initial skier-to-skier contact?
Yes, I think That's correct. There's no disagreement at this point, at least from the testimony I've heard.
It was the angle at
The
which he struck
skier
the
portion where
ground.
they first contact, no matter which version we have, did not create the rib fractures. I don't think anyone thinks that at this point, so that's good. We agree.
And in terms of
When really, it was
just
the angle.
a quick overview before we go into his calculations, which you can explain to the jury, do you believe that Ms. Paltrow's account, and I should say, are you familiar with her account?
I am.
And you heard her trial testimony?
I did.
And read her deposition? And
Yes.
do you believe her account of the collision is consistent with what you know about biomechanical engineering?
Object. Goes beyond the scope of this expert witness.
How so?
Well, go your testimony. Would you please approach the bench?
All right, as they approach the bench, it's a good time to remind you that one of the best ways to stay in the loop with when I am streaming trials or other things when there are not trials is with our Law Nerd Alert at lawnerdalert.com, and to remind you to do the YouTube things. With all of that, let's get to some questions. Emily, what are your thoughts on the trial? Right now, I believe Paltrow's story is more believable. Not to say he wasn't injured, just who's at fault. I'm still with it's clear to me that this plaintiff was injured. I'm not sure how this happened either. There are things from Mr. Ramon's. Oh, he's trying to explain, sir. You can't explain from the witness stand. What? He's like, because what the lawyers wrote in your expert designation has nothing to do with you. I find Mr. Ramon's story difficult in parts. I find Paltrow's story difficult in parts. But I also, was he asking for water? I also find that the Deer Valley employees made a lot of sense. It made a lot of sense. The woman who tobogganed him down had a very clear case of what happened. And I'm, that's kind of where I'm at. Samantha, huge congratulations to
Okay,
you.
so let's go back to that question.
And congratulations to scholarships.
I was asking you, in
The
your
law nerds,
opinion, is Ms. Paltrow's
please enjoy
account
celebrating.
consistent with what you know about biomechanical engineering?
Yes, it is.
And maybe another way to put that is it consistent with the laws of physics?
It's the same question. Yes.
Yeah, and
Exactly.
Dr. Boehm, the jury heard, talked a lot about Newton's laws and the laws of physics, applying those to the evidence in this case. And again, in your analysis, as you apply them, Ms. Paltrow's account is consistent with those.
Objection, explanation. Overruled?
That's correct. Ms. Paltrow's version, her scenario is consistent with the laws of physics and what we know about biomechanics.
And then the account that Dr. Boehm gave, and that is based on Mr. Ramon's account, is that consistent with the laws of physics?
I do not believe it is, and I can explain as we get into it.
Yes. Okay. Great.
Let's get into it.
We'll explain that. Let's go to Dr. Boehm's calculations. So
Very
you
glad
can
James is doing
explain to
this
the jury,
witness.
your analysis of those. We have an easel, and as I understand it, you would like to kind of draw so that you can show them what the
Prefers an
equations
easel
mean. Is
for
that
his
correct?
demonstrative.
That's exactly right.
Okay, so I'll grab the easel and then that board.
Let's grab the easel. Thanks, James. Oh, look at Owens helping him out. Are those your... Wait, is that your markers pouch? James, I want to see. How are we organizing our pens? James, I have questions. Come back.
He's going to also need to see the screen, so is it okay if we put it right here? Are you going to be able to see that?
I can't see it, but it's really more important that the jury see it, so I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Oh, there we go. The pen case is now
And I think...
splayed open at the
I'll-
bottom of the screen.
If it's okay with the judge, you can get off the stand.
They did not ask for him to be designated as an expert. I don't know if they needed to have him designated on the record. I don't know how they would need to, but They did not say we moved to, you know, we moved to a
Okay, so
designate
I'm gonna
him as
pull
an
up
expert.
something that Dr. Bain pulled up in his deposition.
It always sounds like they're saying Bane to me. Like,
Do you
from
remember
Batman.
seeing these documents? And for the record and for counsel, these are the notes in Exhibit 3 of Dr. Bain's deposition. Oh, thank you, your
Sorry,
officer.
I missed the question there.
Yep, no, you're fine. So I'm just pointing you to.
Before you, these are not admitted exhibits, though.
Yeah, I'm not asking them to be admitted. They were just shown in Dr. Bain's deposition, so we're showing them here as well.
Okay, but not in his trial testimony.
He's responding to these.
You said deposition.
He also
Correct.
showed it in his trial testimony.
Oh, trial deposition.
Yeah.
Yep.
I was going to say direct things to the judge, but
I recall this being flashed
Withdrawn.
during his deposition, or during his trial testimony.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Scher. So you recognize this page?
I do.
And I was just describing it. This was shown in Dr. Bain's trial testimony, correct?
That's correct.
And he explained that these are his calculations.
That's right.
Okay, and there's another page as well. I think it's the one just before it, correct?
That's correct. This is where he starts the calculations for the ribs. We're concentrating on the ribs here because that's what he says determines how the accident happened. He said the head injury doesn't matter for that. It's only the ribs.
Okay, great. So since I have very little idea what's going on there, and you do, maybe explain to the jury what's going on.
Sure. Can we go to the page before this?
Sure. And maybe if you, it's just a little bit hard to hear.
Sorry, is that better?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
a little better. Yeah, thanks.
So he's using some basic equations for what we call the center of mass to figure out what happens when someone falls to the ground. Center of mass is if you were to balance someone on your finger, the point that you'd hold them at so that they stay balanced. It's usually a little bit below your belly button, kind of midline front to back, midline left to right. And so if you took all the person's weight, all their person's mass, and put it into one point, that would be the point that you're interested in. So that's what Dr. Bain is doing in these calculations, is he's using that point for Mr. Sanderson. And this first part here, where he has this, that's an equation, X is position. So he's saying there's a certain distance that
no.
center of mass falls. And you can see that over here.
We're in maths.
That's 3.5 feet, or he does it in meters, 1.0668 meters. So center of mass falls to the ground. He's saying that there's no initial falling position, that's fine. No initial falling velocity, V is velocity. And then he has 1/2 acceleration times time squared. And that equation is correct. Acceleration here is the acceleration from gravity. So what he's saying is Mr. Sanderson's fall to the ground for the center of mass from 3.5 feet.
This
probably about
audio
right.
is really gained
Hits
up.
the ground.
I'm going to
within-
switch
he
streams real
calculates
quick.
The time he solves for time.
It has been a
0.466
constant point of contention
So
for me
that's
with
the
this
first part of that,
particular audio.
which is
So give me
great.
1 second
The problem comes in
to switch,
that
to
he
switch
then
streams.
says
Thank you all. I know you
the
can
velocity
hear it,
at
so I
contact
appreciate you.
is 1/2 acceleration times time.
The background noise
And that is absolutely
just
wrong. That is not the velocity at
destroying
contact.
my ears. All right. This
Time squared. And that equation is correct.
is so much better.
Acceleration here is the acceleration
All
from
right.
gravity.
Now
So what
I
he's
can
saying is, Mr.
deal with the
Sanderson's
audio
fall
in
to
my
the
own
ground,
way.
Center of mass from
All right.
3.5 feet, which is probably about right. Hits the ground within, and he
Emily, do you
calculates
like
the
to
time
have
he
more
solves
control?
for time.
Yes.
0.466 seconds.
There we go.
So that's the first part of that, which is great.
Thanks all.
The problem comes in that he then says the velocity at contact is 1/2 acceleration times time. And that is absolutely wrong. That is not the velocity at contact.
So you've
The
lost me at
contact
velocity of contact. This jury is like the
is just
fuck.
the acceleration times time. So he has this extra half.
Acceleration
And
times
it
time.
was unclear to me why that would be there to
I'm
start.
not,
I'm not sure
dissing any of you that are
why you put that in.
loving all of this.
But it creates problems
love
for his
this,
calculations and his opinions
jealous.
moving forward. If we can go to the next page, I can explain that.
Yes, he's saying it's the wrong
So
formula. Ask
these
better
are his
questions, get
equations.
better
If
answers.
You remember in his
Even in
testimony,
math.
he said
In math, the
4,000
question-
newtons. And that's an engineering unit in metric.
We lost
for
me
force.
after Teslas,
4,000
but-
newtons is roughly 950 pounds, I think, in English, but newtons is fine. Over 4,000 newtons, you get the rib fractures. So what is this equation here? I'll show you that and then explain why that 1/2 makes a big difference. So that equation there comes from, at first,
So he's
kinetic
saying
energy.
they asked the wrong questions. They used the wrong
We label that as
equation.
KE, which is equal to
Okay.
1/2 mass
Bad input's
times
going to get you a bad output.
velocity squared for that center of mass. And then he's saying, okay, Mr. Sanderson, as he hits the ground, has a
Mr.
certain
Sanderson.
kinetic energy. That energy has to go somewhere. So what happens is
Do you agree
a
with
force is
that?
applied from the ground to his center of mass, and he decelerates over some distance.
They say
So
it was my
you can
ambition
see
that broke
here
her
he has
leg, when
3
really it was
inches
the angle at which
written
she
here.
hit the ground.
That's
We're back.
important.
We're back
So
to bring it on.
this kinetic energy has to be taken up
This trial
by
is a
some
gift.
force over a distance. That's some amount of work.
Becky,
and
I
that will
appreciate
equal
you. Muffin Man, did you bring enough for the class?
the kinetic energy. And then he divides both sides to get the force.
And is it with you?
The distances cancel on this side. So the force on Mr. Sanderson is 1/2 mass times
is why you
velocity
want your
squared
experts to be in
divided by
person.
distance. And that's exactly what we have here. We have 1/2
He's also a university
Mass,
professor at
velocity
900,
squared,
at
and
900
distance.
universities.
Now, remember, he's doing this in metric. So that 136, that is in kilograms. That's equal to about 300 pounds. So here he has
What?
Miss Paltrow
Bueller?
and Mr. Sanderson's
Bueller?
mass put together. So in this
He's
fall,
so
he's saying,
happy.
okay, the kinetic energy of both of them is
He's so
needed
happy.
here
He's so happy.
during contact. But can we go back to page 5? He uses the velocity here, the 2.29, that has the 1/2 in this.
have
So
no idea
if
what's
we go to the
happening.
next page, yeah. So you can see he's using the wrong velocity. What happens is if you use the wrong velocity in here, let's
Everything's
do
wrong.
Bames as, call this wrong. So what you get is 1/2 mass
I think he's
times
comfortable in front of
1/2
students, and I think he
acceleration
sees the
times
jury right
time.
now as students because he does so much teaching. And
Divided
being in
by
person
distance
is so
and-
much easier.
squared there.
This is why you have your
correct.
experts in person. They can connect with the
Is
jury.
1/2 mass.
So even if the jury is not quite following, they might feel
Acceleration times time squared. So that
more of a
1/2
trust
goes
with
into
him
this equation.
because he's walked them
What does
through
that
it.
mean? That means that this half gets squared. It becomes 1/4. So the force that Dr. Bame calculated for this landing was actually 1/4 of the force he should have calculated.
This
He was
is the
off
only
by a factor
acceptable
of 4.
use of public math
So it shouldn't be
in a trial.
4,680
ask for it.
newtons. It should be 18,600 and some newtons. Actually, I have it here. 18,678 newtons. So he's off
Liz,
by quite a bit.
Just
And
saying
if
that
I may,
the ground
Dr.
broke
Scher,
his
what-
bones is insufficient.
This is obviously all at least
why.
new to me and maybe new to some jurors. What in the end is the
What is the
takeaway
point?
there if there's that much of a mistake?
So there's 2 things.
Thank you, James, for
is
asking that well.
If there were 18,000 newtons applied to Mr. Sanderson's chest, we would expect much worse injuries. The biomechanical engineering literature for much less than that has many more rib fractures, internal injuries, all sorts of things. We don't see any of that
Damage
for
to
Mr.
lungs
Sanderson.
and things?
But the real takeaway and the importance in this case is the mass here. So because he does the 1/4, he needs the mass. He needs the mass
gotta
to
walk to
be
the end of his-
136 kilograms. Now, if you redo the calculations correctly, with just Mr. Sanderson's mass. So Mr. Sanderson is about 80.5 kilograms, or roughly 177 pounds, at least according to the medical records. If you do the calculations with the correct equations and only his mass, you get over 4,000 newtons when he lands. Actually, you get 11,056 newtons. So if he were to fall to the snow using Dr. Bame's calculation method the correct way, then just Mr. Sanderson falling, not Ms. Paltrow involved at all, he could get rib fractures. This is not quite
Interesting.
correct overall. Normally we use what's called effective mass. So all of Mr. Sanderson's mass wouldn't go through his chest. Maybe there'd be some force on his legs. If he hit his head, some force on his head. We typically would say maybe 50% of his mass would be appropriate for effective mass. So instead of the 80 kilograms, we would do, and actually I should put over here, this winds up being 11,000 newtons. And if we do the 40 kilograms instead for Mr. Sanderson, so, and that's, and we use the correct equation, we get sorry, I don't do the math in my head. 5,000.
Sorry, I had to Instagram. I
approximately.
totally forgot to do it this morning.
What this means
I was
is
tired.
Mr. Sanderson can fall to the ground without Miss Paltrow landing on him and sustain the rib fractures according to Dr. Bame's calculation.
She said
method.
she landed on him. So why
if
are we
done correctly,
going through these hoops?
He cannot
though?
say his opinion that Miss Paltrow
Had
had
to?
to land on
That's
Mr.
why.
Sanderson
All right,
to get the rib
that makes
fractures.
sense.
Which means that this goes through the rest of his analysis. So the rest of his analysis is
Is also
wrong.
flawed.
So this is really critical, that one half that he did for the velocity, the wrong velocity, really threw the rest of his analysis into question.
So, Dr. Scher, there's a lot more we could say about the calculations, I'm sure, and you would approach it differently than he did, correct?
That's correct.
But given the way he did it, if he did it correctly, you're saying that the conclusions that he came to are inconsistent with his opinion.
That's correct. Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay, so, yeah. Okay, doctor, let's talk about skier collisions. You've, as you explained earlier, done research to understand what forces are like on the ski slope. In this case, how would you apply what you know about physics to understand the claims about the ski collision?
Sure. I would apply Newton's laws to the contacts, the different versions of the events, and see what makes sense, how it would unfold. Do the physics of the contact that's being testified to make sense? Is it self-consistent?
And this may be another opportunity to draw some pictures if you need to, so feel free to if it will help you. But you were talking about the center of mass earlier. How does that concept factor into how you would evaluate the evidence in this case?
Sure.
My eyes
if
glazed
it's
over a
okay to
little bit.
draw again.
You may.
Thank you.
And I can see what you're drawing through the monitor here. So.
He
Oh,
didn't.
nice. Perfect.
Great. And if you need more board or pages, we have them now. Is that correct?
Hannah, thank you for your comment. Mr. Cheese, because this is the #1 channel to watch live trials on. That's why.
Okay, yeah, great. Go ahead.
So the thing to know with Newton's laws, force equals mass times acceleration. If you
Okay.
have some,
Y'all, did you
I'm
think
gonna
Newton's
draw
law of physics was
two
coming back? Here it
versions
is.
of a skier, and I'm not
It's
the best
back.
Pictionary player. I'm going to draw a top-down version, and I'll draw a side version. So let's start with the top-down. So if we have a
Okay.
skier, and here's the skier's head, and here's the skier's nose. And then we have two
Skis?
skis.
This is fantastic. fantastic.
The center of mass would be, as we mentioned, looking down somewhere around here. Now, if you have a force that goes through the center of mass, so let's say the force,
I just can't
goes
stop thinking of
through.
Star Wars. So the Force is coming. Is that supposed to be Gwyneth Paltrow? She's going
then
to
the
object.
person will accelerate
She's going to put a note
in
to
this
James.
direction. They'll accelerate
saying,
along the line of the
You cannot draw
force.
me like that.
But what happens when you have a force that doesn't go through the center of mass? It'll create an acceleration going in that same direction, but it'll also, there's a distance here, it'll also create a torque, which is equal to the force times the distance,
gotten
that
to
will
torque.
cause the person to rotate. And that's really important because
That's
if the
what
force
Paltrow
does
says
not go through the
happens.
center of mass, there's always a rotation. So if you're hit on this looking down, this would be the right
This
side.
makes more sense.
Then the person's going to rotate counterclockwise in this image. The same thing is true if we look at a skier from the side. So if here we have our skier, and here's their pelvis and center of
Their
mass.
center of mass. I like how he draws the center of mass.
Ski
I
boot.
see you all saying torque, not torque.
And if the person, for example, has a force applied below their center of mass,
The chat is going to start
And
asking
there's,
you to apply
again, some
force,
distance.
sir.
That's going to
I
create-
apologize.
a torque and a backward rotation so that
It's the other kind of torque.
the person moves backward and falls back.
I'm delighted.
There's two things to note with this for skiing in particular that's different than most other events. Skis have releasable bindings. So if I'm looking at this side view, the boot is held in
The boot.
by a heel piece and a toe piece. And so if you have someone
pick.
pitching forward, if the ski slows and the person's center of mass moves forward, it'll create a torque on the boot and it'll release.
The happy
heel of the
sad
boot.
face is sending me too.
And
The falling
for someone
face.
of Miss Paltrow's size, that could be anywhere from, well, it's approximately
the same person.
143
This is the
foot-pounds.
falling person.
So
You start to frown as
143
you fall.
pounds acting over a foot. Same thing is true for the top-down view. If we look at the toe piece for the binding, if there's a torque on the ski, a twisting torque, the ski will also release from the boot. And for someone of Miss Paltrow's size, it's about 37 foot-pounds. So in front of the boot, if there's 37 pounds, 1 foot ahead, it'll release. If it's 2 feet ahead, it's half that value. So
I'm trying to get a good
roughly 7
screenshot for
feet.
Twitter.
So these are the principles that we need to understand the mechanics of an impact in a fall.
So when we apply those principles to this case, what conclusions do you draw?
The other
Sure.
expert is
The
sus.
first is that Miss Paltrow's version of events is consistent with the laws of physics and how people move and rotate.
Now that it's cropped,
And,
the drawing does
What
look
about Mr.
NSFW.
Ramon's version?
For Mr. Ramon's version, I couldn't get it to work. It doesn't match with the laws of physics. The complete part of his testimony just doesn't fit.
And so can you explain why it doesn't fit?
Sure. So Mr. Ramon's version, maybe I should sit down.
Oh, sure, yeah. Go
No,
ahead.
sir. We continue to lecture us. We enjoy your drawing and your frowny face. We enjoy talking about torque, not.
So in Mr.
Twerk?
Ramon's version,
We're ready.
he says that he sees Miss Paltrow
we're all of it.
contact Mr. Sanderson squarely in the back, and he says that it's in the middle.
Jolly
It couldn't be anywhere in the
Rogers.
middle than if he tried, or if she tried, and then also that she rode him down. I think the quote was something like, in
And
his deposition,
bounced.
he says, like she couldn't have been on his back any more than if he had strapped her to his back, something like that.
What, like Yoda
So as
in
they're
a
going
backpack?
down in Mr. Ramon's version, Mr. Sanderson goes spread eagle, arms out, legs out, And the key for me is that Mr. Ramon says
Chad, I have
that the
no
inside
chill.
edges of those skis that are going into this V catch, and Mr. Sanderson stops on a dime.
They just went into the V.
And
Malleus,
if
thank
that were
you.
the case, then Miss Paltrow would keep moving, and, well, maybe I should draw.
We've
Sure,
lost.
go ahead if it
The
will.
shark has been jumped. We've got spread eagle. We've got the V. We've got the twerk. Oh gosh. I don't know what's coming
So,
next.
I'm going to try to draw a top-down version of this. So if we have Mr. Sanderson, and here are his skis. And then I'm going to use a different color for Miss Paltrow.
Was there a
How about
candle
blue?
with the V? Sir, we have
Miss
questions.
Paltrow.
If you're trying to
contacts
say
him
that that is Miss Paltrow,
from the
she is
back.
going to object. Oh, good. We've got multiple
and
color pens.
Now, this is the same whether one ski is between his or both skis. If the skis are apart, it's a little bit different, so we can get to that in a minute. But if her skis are between his,
Because
let's
where
just
else
say,
do the skis go?
then when he falls, and
Love on
here
the
is
slopes.
his, so they're moving in this direction. That was probably obvious, but I wanted to make sure that was clear. So now we're still
The
looking down.
noses gave
Here's
it away.
Mr. Sanderson's back. Here's his head. Here's one arm. Here's another arm.
Oh gosh.
Here's one leg, the other leg. Now,
Where are the skis?
remember, Mr. Ramon says that his skis are in a V, spread eagle. So now,
There's the skis.
if that were to happen,
No ankle
then
break.
he stops very quickly, and Miss Paltrow is going to remain in contact somewhere around here, and her skis are going to stay underneath Mr. Sanderson. When that happens, it's like the center of mass continuing to move forward while the skis
Well, everybody would have been a lot more
slow
hurt.
rapidly, which creates an upward force at that heel. It's going to create a heel release. But
These
as you
drawings are my
heard in
favorite.
the testimony, all the skis were on. It doesn't work. It takes actually very little force for this to release, the heel piece to release.
I need
in
a
scenario like
screenshot
this.
of just the
So it doesn't match
drawings
with physics. And
so I
it's the
can
same
get
way
wrong
whether
answers
one
only.
ski or both skis are in between.
Okay, so how do you know this, especially about the bindings releasing? How are you
Because,
confident about that?
My experience, I mean, I've seen
If the
tons of
ski
binding
doesn't
releases. I know
release-
how bindings work. It's just physics.
Right, and you've specifically done research on binding releasing,
Oh, yes, yes.
and
yes.
You said earlier that there were other scenarios, the skis maybe between Mr. Sanderson's skis, maybe they're diagonal. Did you do evaluation of all those sort of scenarios, and did any of those work?
No, I couldn't get any of them to work. So the key is either she would come out of
Just
the
my
bindings,
email, I love
or
Kai.
she would be stuck on Mr. Sanderson. She wouldn't be able to move past him. If her skis stayed on in various versions of this, I don't know how she continues to move downhill the 10 feet that Mr. Ramon said she wound up if her skis are trapped underneath him.
And would you expect her to get an injury in any of these scenarios?
The happy, sad,
Well,
falling
certainly,
drawing is my
there's that
favorite.
potential, yes, a lower extremity injury for sure.
If, for example, her legs get stuck in one of the scenarios you mentioned.
Right. So, for example, if her ski is rotated out to the side, going in that V with one of his skis, the other, whether it's
Is the
on
V
the
getting
outside or in the
steamed?
inside, can't wind up. So if her ski is on the outside, his ski is going to push her ski out. If this is her ski, as he's falling and moving into that V configuration, it's going to go from this position to here, and it's going to push her ski outward, which I would expect would create a toe release, a twisting release of the bindings, because it actually takes about
18 pounds of force, between 15 and 20, depending on how her bindings would be set. So very little force to release that toe piece. But even if it didn't release, then her ski winds up getting trapped by his, and she can't move forward. So, and in many of these scenarios, her leg would get twisted in a really odd way that would likely create injuries.
Okay, great. I think you can sit down again. And now what I'd like to do is ask you about whether you were involved in creating any animations that would help the jury understand your opinions in this case.
Yes.
And, Your Honor, if I may ask for permission to show the witness these animations so that I can lay some foundation, he can use them to teach the jury.
Yeah, we reserve our same objections on these animations, Your Honor.
Understood.
I can't wait to see these. The drawings are just a delight for me. So this morning we've done biomechanical engineering and physics. If you are working in the field of law, let today be a lesson to you. This is why you have your expert in person when it is in any way possible. You need them to connect to the jury. He's been easier to follow simply by nature of not having a giant green screen behind him. This has made it much easier for him to explain to the jury how things
Recess while they
happen.
straighten out the technology, and then we'll be back.
Oh, we're taking a break. Your Honor, I was trying to tweet things. Your Honor, I'm not ready. All right, it's just gonna have to wait then. Thanks, Your Honor. Because when we breaky, we have to
You
converse.
can step down, whatever you need to do. Thank you.
All right, to the old technology. The other one was a scheduling issue. But if you are the plaintiff, because remember, Terry Sanderson chose to bring this case, you have to consider the fact that we should take a stretch break. You have to consider that you are going to need to bring in experts, and you have to consider what the other side is going to do. So Terry Sanderson brought the lawsuit. This was his choice. So with all of that, it is time. It is time. I love that all of you have gotten all of my movie references today. Thank you. Y'all are the best. Let's go to questions real quick as we wait. I'm going to make sure the volume is turned down so that it does not jump scare me while I am looking at questions. Alrighty, let us go. Let us go to questions as quick as we can. Cora said, I can't stay on because I'm on mobile data. Cora, I'm sorry. This is a lot to stream for mobile data. Just wanted to say hi and get my Emily and Leonard fix. I'm currently in far west Texas on a family vacay with 12 people, $2, one toilet, a tiny shower, no Wi-Fi, and a party line telephone. Send help. Cora, good luck, and may the force and the torques be with you. Hopefully you'll get to play Pictionary. That would be delightful. Motion to have you say, and with that, I yield back when ending a live stream. I will consider it. I will consider it, because I always say thank you for being here and thank you for being honored. Cloak Sword said, are you still live recording the podcast? I haven't seen any notifications for it in the past couple weeks. And thank you for everything you do. I have recorded the Emily show the last 2 weeks very late at night. So to be mindful of law nerds and their sleep, I have not sent out notifications. I do still, but when I'm covering trials, sometimes my schedule gets a little bit screwed. And so I try to make sure that when my trial gets a little bit messed up, I am mindful of it. And mindful of all of you as well. So that is a part of it. But don't worry, we will get there. We will get there with the live trial. Mama Rudy said, how are they calculating that? Yeah, I can't recap the physics. Maybe I missed it, but I don't see where they presented any evidence to the level of damages. Oh, this is to the money. Good, I can explain that. I still need to know what his VA coverage is for any of these doctors. Or diagnoses, one of the two. We haven't seen any receipts. we are at the end of the plaintiff's case, and we have not seen a bill. We have not seen an explanation. I think they're going to argue this is pain and suffering damages, not straight expenses. So I think that's what we're going to do. Question, would Terry Sanderson, and I have to translate it from Taylor Swift in my brain every single time, would Terry Sanderson have to pay Gwyneth Paltrow's legal fees with expensive recreations, i.e. she has deep pockets, or would it be capped somehow? I don't know if attorney's fees are capped in this jurisdiction. I haven't seen anything that indicates they are. Again, he chose to sue. He chose to sue Gwyneth Paltrow. So you would kind of be stuck with the attorney's fees, and then the court gets to determine whether they're reasonable. Midnight Deary said, love seeing Fred and George. Yes, they are a cuddle puddle of kittens back there. It's just a cuddle puddle of cat. Cuddle puddle of cat. His VA treatment should be free, but he's done a lot of other treatment. So they are also going to talk about, they're going to talk about pain and suffering, change of life, future care, therapies, because the VA doesn't necessarily provide everything. Seashell, this was a great question from earlier also. Let me know what you're drinking this morning, because my coffee is ready for me. Whose testimony did you think was more powerful, Whitney's or Eric Christensen's? I found Whitney's testimony yesterday to be some of the most helpful testimony in this trial. Whitney is not connected in any way to Gwyneth Paltrow, hasn't been her ski instructor, doesn't know her personally, so doesn't even have a personal affinity to Gwyneth Paltrow. She seems to me to be the absolutely most neutral witness. Is there a plane above Emily? No. But there is yard work happening outside of my office window. So if you're picking that up on the microphone, that's what it is. It will get closer to my window. I was hoping it would get closer when we're back on trial and I could just mute myself, but that's what we can't do now. NCP in Atlanta, I'm on delay. You were so funny when the jury was called in. Yes, Gwyneth Paltrow is on to something with her goop efforts. We should be drinking green juice. I mean, maybe we should be. Maybe we should be. So instead, I'm going to caffeinate myself delightfully. Could the jury award Gwyneth Paltrow more than $1? It would be hard because she's not asking for more. They've heard that she's going to get attorney's fees. Those get approved by the court. And she hasn't really proven any other damages. What are they going to give her? The cost of a lift ticket at Deer Valley because she lost half a day of skiing? And they can't do punitive damages. So there are no punitive damages claims. Punitive damages are normally where you would get the, hey, fuck you for bringing this case. We, the jury, are annoyed and we would like to tell you how annoyed we are. So here's punitive damages. They can't do that. They can't do the punishment ones. They can only do compensation, the compensatory damages. So with that, they can really, I don't think there's much more they can give her. So Queen B Missy said, question, do you think the defense is putting on too many specialists to be a detriment to their case in front of the jury? We'll see how many they do, but they are going to attack Sanderson's injury because that goes to the damages. I just think that if they go too far, they go too far. We'll see what happens. But this witness I found to be very helpful. Chat, what did you think? Did you find this witness testimony helpful? We haven't gotten to the animations yet. We're going to get to the animaniacs of it all. But did you find it helpful in explaining the way these ribs could have broken? You let me know. So I want to know. I can't pronounce that at all. Ari, your hair looks amazing in this photo. Watch the guy in orange. He did a spit take when the guy called Gwyneth Paltrow is one of the greatest actresses of this age. Oh, y'all were like, this was very helpful. Good. Some of you were like too complex, but a lot of you were like very helpful. To all of you that say stop interrupting, no. Well, it's really just a few of you. This is a commentary channel. I give commentary. So there are plenty of places to watch the trial without commentary. I mean, it's boring, but you're welcome to go do that. Jessica Simon said, damn, now I can't unsee Clark Kent. Either Clark Kent, I think Riley from National Treasure was a really strong one. Some of you see Schwartzy. Just for those of you that are deeply invested in this, I know it's only some of you that are deeply invested in this. And when the court comes back for break, we will be back to, trial life. But for those of you deeply invested in my catch up of Vanderpump Rules, I just finished the season where Schwartz and Katie got married, and it looks like Sheena is heading for divorce. That's where I'm at in Vanderpump Rules. Emily, can you explain what happens during sidebars? Why do they take so long? What is said, and can the witnesses hear them? The witnesses can't always hear them. Sometimes they can, sometimes they can't. And they really try hard if they're talking about the witness. Most of the time, they are arguing what is going to be shown or asked, and they are arguing objections outside the presence of the jury. They are not planning lunch. They are, Your Honor, we can't show the jury this animation because it's outside of the scope of this witness's expertise or experience. This does not demonstrate what they said, et cetera, et cetera. That's what's been going on lately. So it is objections and evidentiary rules and the court kind of pulling people back into line. Y'all, James is a musician as well. I cyber-stalked his public profiles. No shirtless pics, though. Does he have a dog named Evo? Also, he's very religious, so you're welcome and my condolences. A lot of lawyer musicians. Look, there are a lot of lawyer musicians. I find that lawyers, good, especially trial lawyers, are a very creative bunch. Most of the lawyers I know are creative in some way. Law takes a lot of creative thinking outside the box, in addition to logical thinking. So
you go ahead and have the jury come in.
I find that a lot of lawyers are deeply creative. I'm not surprised that, first of all, James lives in Utah. I'm not surprised that he is religious, but I'm also not surprised that he is musical. A lot of musical folks in law, I find it fascinating. But you guys, if you wander around on YouTube, the lawyers on YouTube that I am friendly with or friends with, you know, Rob and Runkle and Hogue are tremendously creative in all of their different ways, from leatherworking to woodworking to video games and complex contract writing, all very creative in their own ways. And so we find a lot of creativity in law, and I'm not surprised by that. Olga, I normally don't entertain breaking news because it derails me, and this is why. I am going to be so derailed by this, but I am fascinated. So another day. I think it would probably go against some of the ethical implications. Casey said, I'm catching up at 1.25, but EDB so excitedly yelling, bring the jury gave me life this morning. I'm going to make a gif of that. Go ahead. I was delighted that he came so close to saying, bring the jury. Bring the jury. We have our Bring the Jury mugs. They are linked or should be linked in this live stream. Let me go make sure they are linked in this live stream. I'll make sure they're linked in the live stream. But we have Bring the Jury mugs. There's like a shelf down below that you can see. I love what we've done for that. So anyway, I find myself as lawyer creatives, I'm more creative in the thought and talk world than in the physical creative world. But I've realized that it's because I have no mind's eye. So yesterday we talked about how brains work. My husband was like, oh my God, this is what you were talking about in the chat. I'm like, yes, we had the greatest conversation yesterday. And he was like, wait, you really can't. And I'm like, do you think I'm fucking with you when I tell you these things? No, I really can't. Which sometimes makes creativity, like painting and stuff, difficult. You can't just picture it in your mind and create it because there is no picture. There is no picture to be had. Ever since James took over, it's been up from here. Can Owens stay as a sidekick for a bit longer? I hope so. James is very linear and easy to follow. Chloe said, so Christensen took off their skis, helped them up, put their skis back on, knew everyone was fine, and then left in 7 minutes. That's what they said. 7 minutes-ish. I swear James is a closet superhero lawyer by day. I mean, he's got a Clark Kent vibe. This biochem engineer makes me feel uneducated and a professional time waster. I mean, he does a lot with his time. I don't know how he does so much. EDB, how do you have time to do all of this? I could ask the same of you, Elaine. I mean, Emily. Okay, first of all, I take umbrage to being called Elaine. I'm teasing. My mic occasionally is not on. How do I have time to do all of this? During trials, I sleep less than I would like to. And by the end of trials, you can see it. My brain starts to like buffer in real time. I think we need a Bring the Jury sticker. There is one linked down below. I just got a questionnaire for federal jury duty and feel like I need it just in case I get called.
Yes, Thank you, Your Honor. May I approach to show the witness the animation?
You may.
Let's see the animation. 23,000 watching. I think
So
we're almost
this
at 30
animation
again
is
today.
number
We will be
5,
soon.
correct?
Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Close up.
Julia, happy
And
birthday.
I'm gonna play it for you.
They're going to play this. We'll get to see it in a minute. I got a Lawnard Love hoodie. Enjoy. Thank you for the super chat, Rachel. To be, K-Rab said, to be registered an engineer, you must take additional coursework and pass specific tests. It's analogous to being board certified as a doctor. So this witness is board certified. But does he have muffins?
Called Close Up. And
I love the songs.
22 seconds.
All right, this is the illustration. This is my favorite thing I've ever seen in a trial. I love it. I absolutely love it. I've seen lots of drawings, especially with vehicle collisions. A lot of people like drive the road and then show where one car was going and where the other car was going.
So again, Mr. Scher.
So I'm not surprised that there
Dr. Scher,
are drawings
your,
in this collision. Let me turn them up.
Maybe explain to the jury your involvement in creating this animation.
Sure, I
turn me
worked
down.
with Brian Brill at Mountain Graphics on the impact and fall portion of this animation. It's not meant to represent exactly what happened, but generally the idea of one of the family of ways this could happen in Miss Paltrow's version.
Julia,
we
that's
don't know
what
some
he's
of the
arguing.
exact
That's
details
exactly what
of
he's
how
arguing.
they contacted, how long they interacted, but it gives
That's
an
exactly
illustration of
their point.
what I'm thinking, my understanding of her version where she's contacted from behind and then fall to the right.
Dr. Van Gogh.
And does the animation make
Yes.
certain assumptions about
Motion granted.
various facts and testimony in the record in this case?
Yes, it does.
Okay, and you can explain those to the jury as we go through it.
Sure, yeah.
And the animation will help you explain what you said earlier about biomechanics, applying biomechanics to this case.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Y'all, do you
So
like this
permission to
layout? I
publish
like
this
this
to the jury, Your
layout.
Honor.
Oh, publish it.
Just, we assert our ongoing objection to the animations or cartoons.
Same
They,
objection, same grounds.
lack foundation.
The cartoons.
Distort the reality and are incomplete.
So animation number
them
5 is
cartoons.
received for demonstrative purposes only to help this witness explain his testimony.
Thank you, Your Honor.
He called them cartoons. I kind of love that snark. I can't
So,
unsee
Dr.
Dr.
Scher,
Van
I'm
Gogh.
gonna
Well, we've got a
let
Vincent
you
Van Gogh.
take the reins here and use it
James?
as you need to explain.
Be
okay?
careful with your language. You're going to send the chat into a tizzy.
Your Honor, we also object to the extent that this witness hasn't testified to any of the placement of any of the other skiers or bodies in this animation.
Did I miss him
Mr.
calling them
Egan,
cartoons
Is
yesterday?
that relevant to this witness's testimony, the other skiers?
No, he's going to talk about the collision itself.
So you should ignore any of the other skiers that are shown in the animation.
Okay, so you can reverse
Mr.
it, Dr.
Bueller,
Scher,
A
to
for effort.
just before
They're
the
very
collision,
expensive
so you
cartoons.
can focus
Cartoons
on
take a
that
lot
and
of work.
Explain
We watch multiple animation YouTube
what you
channels over here.
mean,
The Odd Ones Out is our favorite.
to show by this animation.
Maybe I can't. How do you?
You could press play again and it will get to.
What the fuck is happening?
Okay, there you go. Okay, great. So take us through, if you would, Dr. Scher, what this animation shows from
Oh,
your point of view as a biomechanics
my God.
expert.
Sure. The first thing that you should be aware of is that this is Miss Paltrow's version of the events. So this
Dr.
is-
Scher, sorry to interrupt you.
Oh.
Just maybe pull your mic.
Sorry,
Yeah,
sorry
there
about
you
that. The first thing to be aware of is this is Miss Paltrow's version of the events, so that's what we're showing here. And as we move forward, I'll talk about the physics, kind of like what I drew earlier with the center of mass and the rotation, and that's the idea. That's what went into this. But again, this is not exactly what happened. This is just one of the possible ways it could have happened. So we have Miss Paltrow in black, Mr. Sanderson
Go back,
in
go back,
the
go back.
blue as they move forward in time.
Wait.
it's
Show us the exhibit-y.
her testimony that his skis slid between hers.
Yes.
There we go. She felt a contact
Back to
directly
the
in the
exhibit-y.
back, along her back. It sounded like
This is
her
a
buttocks as
demonstrative, I
well.
know. It's different.
The person was grunting, pressing against her, but they were on their skis for a period of time. If in this situation he's also moving to skier's right, which is in the left in this image, that will create, remember I had the force that was offset from the center of mass. That's going to create a rightward motion for her, but also create some initial rotation. Now, in this portion, there's a number of possibilities. She could be adding weight to her right ski because of the contact from Mr. Sanderson.
Because skiing is dynamic.
When you ski, if you're in, let's just take a snowplow or what my kids call pizza position. If you weight the right ski, you turn left. So if she weights the right ski here more because of the contact, she's going to turn counterclockwise. The contact from Mr. Sanderson, if it's more to the right, will turn her counterclockwise. So as they're moving to the right here, there would be some counterclockwise rotation. And here, her ski can catch, or she could
That's
pitch
what
to the
she
side,
said.
or they could both pitch to the
'Cause he's-
side. They could both lose balance. We're
he's
not sure
building
what
this off
happens.
of her
But as they're
recitation of what
rotating,
happened.
they're continuing to fall. And
It's her expert.
Miss Paltrow's version has them spooning essentially as they're coming down together, which would make sense if their legs got caught up. If he was contacting her below her center of mass, where his right leg was contacting her right leg, her thigh in that area. Also consistent with Miss Paltrow saying that her right knee was splayed open at the end, and she felt right knee discomfort. That all could happen there. So as she's rotating and he's rotating
She didn't say
counterclockwise,
spooning.
they fall to the side. Now, at this point here in the animation, I guess maybe the next frame, if I can do it.
Just click it. Just double click it.
Mr. Sanderson lands on his right side, maybe the right back. It's hard to say. If he lands on his right side, kind of like Dr. Boehm said, he needs to land on the elbow, that can happen. That can create lateral rib fractures. But that's not the only way. His arm could be out. He could land on the side and create lateral rib fractures. He could land on his side and a little bit towards the back, and
Not
Miss Paltrow
torque.
could land on him. She could be fully
Hi,
on him,
Georgie.
maybe with
You
her,
wanna say hi to
her
the lawners, or do you
buttocks
just
or
wanna
her
glitter
back
me
or
with
some
cat
portion
fur?
of her mass compresses his chest front to back, and that can create his rib fractures. There's a lot of different ways this could happen. I can't tell which one of those is right, but all of those are consistent with her version of the events.
He could have fallen on
As
her
they
elbow or his elbow.
hit the snow, they would continue to move forward until friction slows them down. And it's also important to note, we haven't talked about the head injury,
George.
but hitting
the lap
the
is
back of the
occupied
head or the
this
side of the head, he could have his head turned. All of those are possibilities for him to contact his head on the snow. So that's not inconsistent as well.
Would it be helpful to show it in real time? You've been doing it kind of slow motion, which has
Sure.
also been very helpful. Maybe start from this beginning and just play it.
Objection, lacks
I
foundation
think-
for trajectory, speed, and direction.
Overruled, it's a demonstrative
I
of
still
this
think
witness's
the
testimony only.
grunt was
Thank
from
you.
the impact, because I think Sanderson didn't see her. If it happened the way that it went down
Okay,
for
this
her in
is-
her story,
Sorry, yeah, go ahead, Dr.
This is
Scher.
then
from
if
the
he
beginning.
doesn't see her
And if there's anything you
audibly
want to comment
makes
on as
a
it happens,
noise
feel free.
because of their collision, that makes sense to me. Why there would be a noise. Oh, wait, this is me sucking. Hold on. Ah, Emily, fail. Sorry.
I think that accurately reflects
Do it
the
again, do it
version
again.
that Miss Paltrow testified to that matches the laws of physics and biomechanics as I understand them.
And would it be helpful to show, there's one other animation that has a little zoom in from the other angle. Would that also be helpful?
Yes.
I think, it can't
Okay,
hurt.
let's show that then. Permission to approach, Your Honor, for that.
Let's see the zoom in from the other angle.
This will be number
No Coldplay Man
4.
here.
It's called Zoomed In.
Coldplay Man was not on the mountain. But it's interesting that Mr. Ramon thought that, isn't it?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Thanks.
So
Okay.
why are they both in dark ski suits for this? Probably because it's easy to animate. So.
Okay, Dr. Scher. So I'm playing you number 4.
Oh, we can
the
play it
zoomed in
again.
from the side.
You're right.
version.
Let's rewind it. I want to see it again. Do you guys want to see it again? Let's see it again. We're just going to back up and then we'll 1.25 and catch up. Chat is Bay. Chat is so wise. Chat is like, hey, we can hit the instant replay. Let's hit the instant replay.
If there's anything you want to comment on as it happens, feel free.
And then Sanderson comes over. And then they fall.
I think that accurately reflects the version that Miss Paltrow testified to that matches the laws of physics and biomechanics as I understand them.
And would it be helpful to show, there's one other animation.
All right.
Oh, sorry.
Hopefully we'll get to
Zoomed
this.
in from the creating this version as well.
Yes, this is the camera view.
All right.
Got it.
Hopefully we'll get to
And
this.
will this animation also help you explain the same things you've been going
I don't
over?
see Sanderson
It's
in
the
court
same
today.
thing, sure. Yeah, I think it also visualizes, it illustrates my opinion.
Okay. Your Honor, permission to show this animation?
She said she
Subject to the same
landed
objections by
on
the
him.
plaintiffs, the animation 4 zoomed inside is received for demonstrative purposes only.
She said she landed on him.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor.
Sanderson has 2 complete fractures and two
Dr. Scher, maybe since we've already
non-complete
gone through
fractures.
the slow motion, let's just play this one from the start, and then you can add anything that you can
They did a good job with the
provide to
texturing
the
of the
jury
snow
from this angle.
Sure.
on their
Here,
quote-unquote
let's
cartoons.
play first and then, there we go.
So that's
I'll wait
Paltrow
until
skiing.
the contact point. So it's coming up. Here we go. There's contact, fall to the right. This one doesn't show the rotation quite as much, and we don't know the amount of counterclockwise rotation as well. There could be a little, there could be more
And
or
then
less.
in green, you've got the
Right,
ski
we're not sure.
instructor
But if
coming
you-
over,
if
and
you
then
go
up the hill is
backwards
Mr.
a little
Ramon.
bit, into the moment of the collision. This one maybe shows, does this one show the skis coming between the skis?
Yes, it does.
Yes.
And I think it's better visualized in this one.
Yeah, and again, what's the significance of that in terms of how the mechanism of the fall occurs?
Well, that's Miss Paltrow's testimony, and it works for the physics of them falling and rotating slightly counterclockwise. Frankly, if it wasn't both skis, if it was one ski between hers, the kinematics would be the same. For example, if his right ski were on the outside of her right ski, it wouldn't change the general kinematics. This is generally, and I keep saying generally because we don't know the exact details of it, this would work.
I'm
So if we
surprised the house
flip
doesn't have a camera.
the positions of the parties, and Mr. Sanderson was in front, Ms. Paltrow came from behind. Using this as a good visual for the jury, will you explain your opinions about what you would expect to happen?
I
on
find
Mr.
James's
Ramon's
questioning
account, I
so
should
easy
say.
to follow.
Well,
Thank
Mr.
you,
Ramon's account is
James.
very different because in Mr. Ramon's account, Mr. Sanderson goes spread eagle and his skis go out into that V and the inside edges catch.
Is it a
and
flying
that
V?
changes the kinematics, the motion. It's a very different version of what happens with the contact.
No shit, it's a very different
And,
version. That's why
in
we're
terms,
here.
I guess we've covered that. So maybe we'll wrap up here.
Kathleen, this witness has to use the word if because he wasn't there. He
We've
doesn't
covered
know.
a lot of things, a lot of new things
We
perhaps
did,
for
James. Thank you.
members of the jury and those of us in the room. Will you summarize for us what are the main points that you want to get across for the jury here?
Sure. The first is that Dr. Boehm cannot say with any accuracy that Miss Paltrow landed on Mr. Sanderson. His calculations are wrong. And when you look at the equations done properly, Mr. Sanderson can land on the snow and sustain his injuries without Miss Paltrow falling on him.
And if I may, Dr. Scher, was it your understanding that Dr. Boehm's opinion was that his account was the only possible way the injuries
That's
could
what
occur?
he said.
Yes, Mr. Ramon's version was the only possible way. He said Miss Paltrow's was impossible, which I believe is false. I think Miss Paltrow's version is possible.
Right. And would you say that Ms. Paltrow's is the more likely of the two accounts?
Well, considering it's the only one that matches with the physics of what would happen in contact, yes, I think so.
Okay, and I interrupted you. You were going through your main points. What was the next one?
Well, I think we've covered it. The second thing is that Dr. Boehm cannot say that Miss Paltrow's version is impossible. That's absolutely wrong.
It sounds like you're saying, in contrast to Dr. Boehm, that there are various ways
Things are possible.
Accident could have happened, the injuries could have occurred for Mr. Sanderson. Is that right?
That's correct.
That's what he said.
And you've evaluated the various testimony, correct?
I have.
And you've done a careful analysis from a biomechanical engineer's perspective on what different scenarios might be likely or how they would happen, correct?
Correct.
And is it your opinion that Ms. Paltrow's version is the more likely of the two versions that you looked at, Mr. Ramones and Ms. Paltrow?
Yes, once again, it's the only version out of the two that matches with the laws of physics, the biomechanics of it.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to tell the jury that
Possibly
maybe
interesting.
I interrupted you on and you missed out on?
No, I think we're good.
Okay, thank you. And that's all for now, Your Honor.
Can you keep the screen there?
Sure.
You can turn it off. Well, actually, leave it on for right now.
On or off?
On.
On, okay.
Mr. Egan, Mr. Mueller.
Morning, Mr. Irving. Do you prefer Dr. Scher?
Sure, that works.
Sure, Dr. Scher?
He's like, call me doctor.
Um,
Dr. Van Gogh.
This version right here.
James is so easy to follow. He's kind of a breath of fresh
Back
air
it
of the
up
lawyers
and
in this
down
trial.
to here,
All right,
on the
Bueller.
scroll.
To here?
Let's
Yeah,
let's
and
joke
then
about these pictures.
Forward it out halfway between the last one. Okay, a little farther. Just before, when Mr. Sanderson, who's also,
Maybe it's easier if you do it.
well, could you just go a little bit farther forward? Just go slower. I just want to get Mr. Sanderson, who's sometimes called Dr. Sanderson.
Mr. Jeter, would you mind putting on the remote that allows you to be picked up?
Okay, how about, can I use this?
Sure. Yeah.
Is this working? Oh, wait, now it is. Okay, go a little farther forward, please. Okay, and then when we get, okay.
Oh, let me make this smaller. Sorry.
This is Terry Sanderson.
That's Mr. Sanderson, that's right.
Okay. So his right eye is, okay, go a little farther. I'll just another thing, fractions, a little bit farther. Okay. So you have his head turned. That's based on your testimony that he is looking down the hill, I guess. Is that what you're saying?
I believe his testimony is that he's looking at a woman who's a little downhill to the left. He notices her, looks at her. I don't remember what the exact words are.
Okay, go a little farther. So his head, his left eye would be looking directly at Miss Paltrow. He would see her, right?
I believe so.
And it's inconsistent with his testimony. He didn't see
know.
her at all.
That's correct.
But he would see her there, wouldn't he?
I would think so.
Isn't he blind in one eye? Which eye is he blind
Go a
in?
little farther, just another fraction. Okay. Now, in this picture, you don't have Craig Ramon in there. Who, how far above would this point be? Where I just pointed, how many yards would that be above this image right here?
I don't know without doing a measurement, but I'm concentrating on the collision between Mr. Sanderson and Ms. Paltrow.
Well, Craig Ramon testifies he was about 30 to 40 feet above.
No, he said more than 40 feet.
So these objects are about bent over, maybe 5 feet high. So if we just flop over.
Did he say flop over?
6 bodies, we'd get to 30 feet. That would be about right here.
I'm not sure.
Well, you're an engineer, highly trained PhD. You can't even guesstimate that.
Oh, boy.
That would be about 30 feet.
I can't tell.
Would up here be 30 feet?
He's like, I don't know.
Don't you think it'd be a lot more than 30 feet?
Probably, but I don't know.
Well,
He didn't
helped
measure it.
create this animation. You don't know the distances in your own animation?
No,
This is
I've
the
concentrated on the
cross-examination.
collision portion. That's the biomechanics portion.
Okay, who did the estimates or guesstimates of the distances of the bodies of the other people?
So that's going to be Mr. Baugher, who's going to be on soon, I assume.
Okay, so
Twitter's
this
eating my
animation
tweets.
doesn't have Craig Ramon in the scene at all?
Not at this point.
Okay. Is it because the defense doesn't want him in the scene, so to discredit his witness account?
Oh, I don't think that's the case at all. You'll have to ask Mr. Baugher.
Okay.
Bueller,
You
you're
will.
blocking the video. Thank you.
Okay.
You're
let's
blocking the
see.
camera, Bueller.
Just go another little section.
You just tell me when. I'll keep going until you
Yeah,
say
just
stop.
go slow. I just want to go slow motion.
I want to go slow too. Let's just take it step by step.
Now stop right
Who
there.
caused this crash?
Now, do you know the time, how much time from the initial, let's say, impact of their bodies to
I'm
this
actually
point
not
would be?
mad at Bueller's
You did this
questioning at all.
calculation. This is your bailiwick. What you're talking about
Do you mean in the animation or do you mean in real
right
life?
now. Yeah.
Podunk
From impact to
citizen.
this point.
If there is not a lawyer band named Rock the Docket, I will be
Fourth of a
pissed.
second, a half a second,
That's
tenth of a
delightful.
second. Do you?
Ms. Paltrow says that they're in contact for a little while, a few seconds before they fall over. So I don't know what it is in particular in this animation, if that's what you're asking.
So you helped design this part of the animation, so you don't know how far it is. You just guessed it.
He didn't guess.
Again, we don't know exact timing and distance. This represents an illustration of the version. So,
how it happened.
Yeah, it is what it is.
It's an illustration of the version, but there could be wide variability in that version, right?
There is variability, but we have constraints on it.
The constraints are, it could have happened the opposite way, right?
The opposite way.
Ms. Paltrow hit Terry Sanderson.
No, I don't think so. Not with the testimony that's given. We have two versions. We have Mr. Ramon's version, and we have Ms. Paltrow's version. This is Ms. Paltrow's version. Mr. Ramon's version is very different.
Okay.
Yeah, it is.
Let's
Very
talk
different.
about that for a second.
No, Bueller's doing his job. Bueller's got to challenge these, and I think he's doing it well. Hey, Dr. B, looking good, babe. I like that. I like that hoodie.
You're being paid, excuse me, you're being paid, what is it, $4.25 an hour for this?
No,
Is it more than $4.25 an hour?
it is.
$4.50 an hour?
Yep.
500?
Are we
It's
gonna
500 now.
keep guessing?
500 an hour.
Bye, B.
And you billed something over $10,000 so far for your work?
I don't
That
doubt
sounds
that.
about right.
More than 15,000?
No, I don't think so.
So between 10 and
James should have asked him
15,000.
about this before.
Okay.
I prefer.
You can turn that off for right now.
I prefer when they ask
think that's probably
on direct because it's going to come up.
Leave it there.
Oh.
I may come back to it.
What's the best way to do it? Is disconnect it? Is that? Yeah, maybe just disconnect. That, okay.
They're always going to ask this kind of stuff. I just prefer, truly, when it happens earlier. Did he just wink? Sir, what's happening? What are we waiting for? Some experts charge less than others, but yes, all experts are paid. I just think I like it when they cover it on direct. I don't know.
No, you're here to teach the jury, right? The defendant's version, correct?
Teach
I
the
like
jury the
demonstratives.
physics that would be helpful in understanding how to
And I've
assess the
realized it's
accident.
because I can't visualize things in my brain.
So that's a no. You're not
I
teaching
didn't
the
realize
defendant's version.
that was unique to me.
I'm not teaching any version. I'm teaching the physics and mechanical engineering, biomechanical
So I do.
engineering. that would
Demonstratives help me.
the jury.
I need someone to show it
I
to
know
me.
it's hard for
I can't
expert
visualize
witnesses
it. I
to
need
say
you to
yes or
show
no.
me.
Are you teaching the defendant's version?
I guess I don't understand the question.
Okay. Seemed like a simple question. Next, I'd like to
The
talk
snark-
about,
the
did you
snark is funny.
review Dr. Gibby's testimony at trial?
No, but I did see some of his trial testimony.
All of it or some of it?
Some of it.
Was it more than 10 minutes?
Probably, yeah.
More than 20 minutes?
Did you watch it with us?
Yep.
Probably not because we were talking.
More than an hour?
I don't think more than an hour.
Okay.
It's funny because occasionally I'll
You
see a
didn't
comment like, "Why are you
disclose
talking?"
anything
I was the
about
kid in class that
hearing
talked
Dr.
to. Don't worry
Gibby's
about it.
Testimony.
I'm not sure what you mean, but I did see it.
I agree that he's
Okay,
teaching the physics of the thing, but then he is agreeing with
You've never
Paltrow's
disclosed
version.
to the plaintiff your reports or your testimony ahead of this trial, correct?
Your Honor, may we approach?
Why? Lacey. All right, I'm going to get to some questions. Closed captioning struggles with trials. Where did I get my hoodie? Oh, I look. I feel like I've got the layout in the exact place I want it to be. I'm super stoked with this. Target, but it was a couple years ago, and if they ever sell them again, I am buying more. Let's continue with questions. Maggie said, I saw Humpty Dumpty all dressed chips. I sent Humpty Dumpty all dressed chips your way. How were they? Love you and your streams. Glad to catch you live today. Maggie, the Humpty Dumpty all dressed chips were quite good. Thank you. I also love the Ruffles ones. Those are the OG for me, but the Humpty Dumpty were quite good. I will probably grab another bag and do a taste test between the two with Dr. B. Victor Mann said, I have studied, I don't know if this is Virginia law or VA law. I can explain if needed. Thank you. So one of the two, but with Terry getting treatment at the VA, medical bills are not going to be the thing here. And we've not seen anyone introduce medical bills here. You do realize we now need a sticker with both George and Fred together hanging out with mom. We have something in the works with Fred and George. Christine said, so new item for Goop, strap on Paltrow's control. No. Tammy said, had shoulder surgery yesterday. Listen to you is a nice way to recover. Tammy, rest well. Shoulder surgery is rough. We've been through lots of orthopedic surgeries at this house, so I understand. Kathleen said, my ex-husband is an LA entertainment lawyer. Lawyers can be difficult to be married to. Paige said, Van Gogh only has one ear. This Dr. Van Gogh seems to have two. I second the night owl notifications. Okay. I will take that under advisement. I will take it under advisement. Kathleen said, shocked nobody has video. Everybody's shocked nobody has video. But they didn't do a press conference till 3 years after it happened. So somebody might have had video 3 years before. Emily, have you ever tried fry sauce while in Utah? No. If not, law nerds, you must try it before leaving. Okay. Could this accident literally have been caused by Terry being blind in one eye? I don't know. It's possible that he just didn't see her.
Are you an expert on broken ribs?
I am comfortable talking about the biomechanics related to rib fractures.
He's like, but I don't treat them.
Have you done any papers or studies or research on ribs and rib fractures?
Me personally,
Noted.
no, but I've read the biomechanical and engineering literature relevant to them.
Okay. You haven't mentioned that biomechanical
They did that
literature
yesterday,
in specifics, correct?
and I don't remember what they said.
I'm not sure about in specifics, but I think we mentioned it on direct.
Okay. Well,
Yeah, Dr. Twerk has been very helpful today. Tiffany, you're delightful. This guy made all of us
So
feel like
you
we haven't
said that,
accomplished enough in our time.
Dr. Sanderson? or
Those are
I'm just
big
gonna call him
accomplishments every
Terry.
day.
Terry was 70 years old at the time of this crash?
It was 69, but effectively 70 for biomechanics purposes.
Effectively because 70 is older?
No, because there's actually good information in the biomechanical engineering literature about the amount of chest compression required to create rib fractures for 70-year-olds.
And not 69-year-olds?
Well, it's actually the full distribution, but the paper that I'm thinking of from Agnew specifically talks about 70-year-olds.
You didn't mention that paper today.
No, but would you like it?
Not right now, thanks. I've not seen it.
He was annoyed by that.
Let's see.
Jen said it's a human pit maneuver.
I'm gonna
Siggy,
go right to
good luck painting your
another
bathroom.
point. You have this theory of rotation, correct? That the version you're calling
We
Ms.
learn so
Paltrow's
much in our
version
trials.
is a kind of a rotation version?
There
I love
is
how
some
much we learn in
rotation.
these trials.
It may be a little, it might be more than a little. We don't know.
Okay, so we don't know how much rotation there is, correct?
Sure.
Okay. I'd like to, well, let me see what this thing works. It didn't work last time. This is working now.
What, if anything, happened to the GoPro? That's what we want to know this trial. What, if anything, happened to the GoPro? But I can't unsee Dr. Van Gogh. We're stuck here now. Like, my brain is just stuck in the loop. Why is the lawyer now calling the plaintiff's doctor? Why is the lawyer now calling the plaintiff's doctor?
I think you've already done it.
This is the
Someone on your team has.
defendant's doctor
Okay,
being
good.
cross-examined by the plaintiff's lawyer.
May I borrow a pen?
They're not his pens. They're James's pens. Go ask Sweet James. James would like to be asked.
Your Honor, we would object to him writing on the witness's board.
I would object to that too.
It's not an exhibit. It's certainly fair game.
It's a demonstrative. He's gonna draw on the picture. Look at James's face.
Well,
Ooh.
Can we mark it as an exhibit, Your Honor?
Why don't you take a picture of it and you can use that and then he can add to it.
Take a picture. It'll last longer.
It is our board.
Oh my God, Owens.
In academic
We
fields,
don't have any questions right now, so.
in
It's my
academic
stapler.
fields, it's common that
my
that people
stapler.
write on each other's drawings, correct?
I don't know that I've seen that, but I don't have a problem with you drawing.
Okay.
Oh goody.
So, you testified that Craig Ramon says
They've got to use a different color.
Terry was hit directly in the back, and they went down, and Craig Ramon was somewhere above, 30 to 40 feet,
Your Honor, it's our
and
paper.
it happened in a fraction of a second, correct?
So funny.
Yes, the fall, I would agree with that.
Okay, less than a second.
Sure.
Okay. So there was a scream. So and the scream occurred, and there was within a fraction of a second. And I don't believe Craig Ramon never testified where Ms. Paltrow's skis were.
Correct.
So her skis could have been going underneath Terry, like this. The pink ones would be Ms. Paltrow's skis. Is that a version that is possible?
It is not.
It's you're saying it's not possible.
That is not possible with the version that Mr. Ramon states.
his version didn't talk about her skis. Now, here, I'll draw what her body, pink would be her body, still square in the back.
What are we drawing?
Isn't that
Another
possible?
body?
So, no, with Mr. Ramon's version, if I may, that is not possible.
may,
So,
sir.
in this situation here,
It's your show.
when Mr. Sanderson's skis go into a V, and I guess you're
Flying
saying
V.
her skis are under his
Or a
skis,
V
which
scented
I'm not
candle.
sure how that happens because the tips curve up, but we'll go with it. Somehow, she winds
It
up
really is all
in
about
this
the tip,
situation
chat.
getting caught with her left ski around Mr. Sanderson.
I'd be so.
And
I'd
she
be,
would not
I'd be salty if somebody
continue
pissed.
past 5 to 10
if somebody
feet,
touched my
and I
board,
would
too.
expect a twisting release of her left ski.
Well, that's her version. I'm talking about Mr. Ramon's version.
No. I'm talking about what you just drew for Mr. Ramon's version.
Mr. Ramon's version, well, isn't it possible her skis could be pointing straight like this? And let me get it right here. So, yeah, so she could be going straight, and she could be turning
Cannot
left
Tweet.
and up and hit square in the back, but her skis are pointed this way. Isn't that another version?
So for her skis to
Yes or no
miss.
question?
Oh, no, it's not. Do you want me to explain?
In a second. I'm asking the questions here. So
Oh,
the,
snappy.
so are you saying that her body could not be turned while her skis are going in one direction and she's turning up to the left? Is that possible?
Not for Mr. Ramon's version. Is it possible in general? Sure. But in her version, I'm sorry,
Well,
in his version, no.
This happened in a fraction of a second. I don't think Mr. Ramon testified that he has a videographic or photographic memory. Do you?
Well, he's pretty particular in his testimony about how she was on Mr. Sanderson's back.
Right, and he could, you see the circle I have? Let's see, well, actually, maybe I could do it I've got it wrong. Let's do it the other way. Her body could be like this, and her skis could be like this, too. And people turn all the time while they're skiing, and their skis are going one direction, but their body is pointed a different. Right here. Can you see me?
Bueller, the mic.
You see that?
I see you turning, sure.
That's possible, right?
What you're doing in general is possible. Are you asking, does that match with Mr. Ramon's testimony? No, and I'm happy to explain why.
I think Mr. Ramon's testimony is, it happens in a fraction of a second. Mr. Ramon, a professional wannabe freestyle skier,
What?
likes to talk about ski angles.
A
but the
professional
main part
wannabe
is the
freestyle
body.
skier?
He saw the body, and then the bodies go down together, and she lands on top of him. You're saying that your versions, which you are not based on anything except your recreation of the biomechanics, are superior to an eyewitness. Isn't that what you're saying?
No, we have two versions of the accident. We have Mr. Ramon's version, and we have Miss Paltrow's version. I have assessed both using physics and biomechanics, and I'm sorry to say Mr. Ramon's version does not meet with the laws of physics. It's not consistent, internally
just doesn't
consistent,
make sense,
and Miss
sir.
Paltrow's is.
Well, I don't think Mr. Ramon's version was designed to be consistent with the version of events. It happened in less than a second. And we don't know the direction of the skis. In his version, he never testified to the direction of Ms. Paltrow's skis in any of his testimony. Isn't that true?
He did not testify to the direction of her skis. That's true.
Thank you. So if Ms. Paltrow was seen down, turning up to the left, she hits Terry Sanderson square in the back, and they can fall down to the right, especially if her momentum is going, well, you know, I'm not a biomechanical engineer. I'll try to do it right here. It could be her shoulder that hits him square in the back, couldn't it? He didn't say what part of Miss Paltrow's body hit Miss Mr. Sanderson, did he?
He did not say. He said, well, here, I can tell you exactly what he said. He said,
Take your time.
I appreciate that he's like, take your time. I want to see exactly what he said, because this is what was relied on by this expert, which is why it's allowed in.
he said squarely in the back. She couldn't have hit him in the back any better right in the middle than if she tried. And she couldn't have been back on his back any more than if he would have strapped her on the back, like a backpack.
Like Yoda in a backpack.
That doesn't mean her body was straight.
Might not be exactly straight.
Yeah, it could be off center because she was skiing down.
So it's
She's like
their
this,
interpretation
and
of his
hits him right in the back.
Testimony.
Maybe it was a little
It's
off
a fair
center
question.
because Mr. Ramon only had the view for a few seconds.
Doctor seems not amused.
And then her arms wrap around, her arms could have wrapped around Terry Sanderson, right?
I don't think there's any testimony about that. Is it possible? Maybe, but
Well,
I don't
where
think
would
there's
they have
testimony.
gone?
The testimony doesn't.
Down
Sorry,
to the side?
that was me.
She went in like this?
In front of her,
I mean, most likely, don't skiers ski like this usually,
often.
often? What are the other positions?
They can have her arms
Oh,
in
we're
more,
back to positions.
have them out more,
So she could be like
have her arms
this
down
and
to her
turn like
side,
this?
and the poles heading back.
Okay.
There's all sorts of options.
All sorts of
So in
positions.
that fraction of a
sir.
second, Mr.
Don't make us
Ramon
talk
saw
about positions.
the collision,
with
the screen
Dr.
was
Van
up
Gogh.
here, he turns his head,
We saw them on the drawing.
and she could hit him square in the back. She could have her, at that point, her body could have turned and possibly hit her, but the point is, the skis could have been going at a different angle, one or the other, and still cause this crash. And your versions assume those are not possible because
I think
you
he
assume
said
that
this was the most possible.
that there's only
most
one way,
probable
that their skis
possible.
were going parallel to each other. This is your only assumption, right?
Wrong.
You made assumptions that these are possible,
I looked at other angles. That's right.
and the testimony, though, you said there's no testimony about the angle of her skis from Mr. Ramon, correct?
That's true.
I think it's adorable that the defense thinks they're getting through 4 experts today. I don't see how that's possible. I don't see how that's possible.
made a lot
Want
of
to talk about
assumptions,
possibilities?
correct,
Getting
to
through
make
that many
these
witnesses,
animations,
I don't
right?
see as possible.
Yes and no.
I
How
thought
do
that
we
would
do
be
that?
more than
This
one
witness is very
assumption?
patient on cross, which I appreciate.
There are
That's a
some
yes or no?
assumptions.
Chat,
Sure,
we're like
more than one assumption.
Okay,
we're a handful of subscribers away
100?
from 712,000.
less than
Go ahead
10?
and subscribe.
I don't know.
You don't
Make it
know how
big.
many assumptions you've made, correct?
That's right. Sure.
Okay.
You know what they say when you assume. Exactly, Rob. So don't forget to do the YouTube things. Is Paltrow in the courtroom today? Yes, Paltrow is in the courtroom today.
Now,
Sanderson is not.
I know counsel.
Freelance are going to have to be finished because the
Owens
court's
likes
going to cut them off.
Do this a lot, like it's a touchdown, but
I do that too.
on redirect.
Bring
Mr.
the jury.
Ramon, did you see all of his testimony for this trial?
The plaintiff did it
I don't know if I
too.
saw all
He
of
said
it,
he
but
fell like
certainly
this.
I saw a lot of it.
Okay, you saw the testimony last week, correct?
Is there any more than that?
There was a little bit yesterday.
Okay, I didn't see anything
Had nothing to
yesterday. I
do
was
with this.
traveling.
Had to do with that, Mr. Ramon reported what he saw the same day and the same week 7 years ago. And you're recreating this, what, about 5 months ago, correct?
I don't remember when it was.
And
Less than a year ago.
I don't recall.
You don't recall when you consulted with Mr. Brill and made the
Sir,
animation?
time is a
This
construct.
has been ongoing for a while. This case has been dragging on, so I don't know when it was.
Sir, we've been here for
So
forever.
You've been working on this for, let's say, more than 8 months?
Sure.
You don't know?
Certainly, we've been in contact with counsel for longer than 8 months.
Lex, we are hearing that Apple and Moses will have their
And for the
depositions read
record,
in,
Your Honor, I'd like
and they
to
will
move to
not
strike all of
testify
his testimony
live.
because this wasn't disclosed improperly.
Ew. This wasn't disclosed improperly?
I anticipate the ruling, but I just wanted, for the record, make the ruling.
It's overruled. It was disclosed properly, counsel.
Okay.
Oh, the judge is snapping back in front of the jury. The
What
judge
I'd
did
like to
not
do
like
is,
that counsel did that. Because counsel talked about this
Understand
at
that you
sidebar and is
made a
now
lot of
pissed off.
assumptions, and the jury would like to know
Interesting.
how reliable your opinions are. So how can that be reliable
like
when
to
you
know.
totally discount some major events like what the direction of Miss Paltrow's body was compared to her skis?
Huh.
And there is testimony about Miss Paltrow's body movement. Do you know that?
I guess I don't
Prior to the
understand.
crash?
your-
Just prior to the crash?
What version are you talking about? I don't know what you're talking about, sorry.
Do you know about the version of Carrie Oakes?
I don't think she saw the accident.
Owen wouldn't be.
Have you read her deposition?
Owen wouldn't be
I have.
testifying. It would be James.
You realize she testified
I would
that
let him go.
one of the kids said, "Mommy,
He
watch
got
us
roasted
ski."
by the court in front of the jury. I would let that
The kids were
happen.
up there on the left.
Let the jurors see
Miss
it.
Paltrow was down on the right, which would tend to show that Miss Paltrow was looking up to her left at the point of collision.
I don't recall that.
Okay. So you're
I think his
excluding
cross was going
Carrie
better
Oakes'
earlier.
testimony, correct?
That's wrong.
You're including her testimony?
I considered it, sure.
And you,
I think.
are there any
we
assumptions you've
flagged
made based on her
Barfield.
testimony?
Not in particular that I can think of, but there may
So
be.
could you speak up?
Not in particular that I can think of.
Okay.
Poor
Not
witnesses today.
particularly that you can think of about Carrie Oakes' testimony, okay? Are you an expert on head injuries?
I'm comfortable talking about head injuries from the biomechanics standpoint.
Like
You
how
ever
a head
studied-
collides into shit.
Or held yourself out as an expert on concussion?
If it's diagnosing or treating concussion, no. If it's the biomechanics related to the formation of concussion, yes, I've done helmet research and head injury research, in particular for snow sports.
Did you apply any of your knowledge about concussion to this case?
I certainly looked at it, but Dr. Boehm was very particular in his testimony that it was only the rib fractures that allowed him to say that Ms. Paltrow contacted Mr. Sanderson from behind. So that's what I concentrated on for the jury.
And you ignored his discussion about the head injury?
Oh no, I certainly considered it.
And it's not relevant in this case?
Well, in disproving Dr. Boehm, it's not relevant, but I'm happy to talk about it.
He's like, I would love to have a
Well,
chat.
it's not clear you disproved Dr. Boehm when you don't even know the direction of Miss Paltrow's skis at the beginning of this. It's also, I think, a big assumption to say what the body position of Miss Paltrow was when she hit Terry Sanderson in the back.
Sustained, and I don't, was there a question in there, counsel?
No, it's
if
just
that
argument.
was accurate, I'll withdraw it.
He said, no, it's accurate. It's just argument, sir. That was argument. This expert has a great trial demeanor. Just a great trial demeanor. And again, this is why you have your experts present in court. He's likable. He was easy enough to follow, but the judge is just
So you've
done.
never studied rib injuries. Have you ever testified about rib injuries before?
Could you clarify what the question is?
Oh, the judge
Have
is
you ever
jumping in
studied
with
rib
his own
injuries,
objections. Hey,
and
James, that's your cue to object more, buddy.
Testified about them?
When the
in
judge is doing
past?
them all.
That sounds like two questions.
Have you ever testified about rib injuries? in
That
the
would be
past?
compound.
I don't recall, but it's
Okay.
likely.
Most likely you have?
I think so.
How many,
They're
have you
common.
testified more than 100 times?
In trial, probably 35 times, something in that ballpark.
In total, under oath, have you testified more than 100 times?
Including depositions, yes.
More than, less than 200 times?
I would agree with that.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with the chat. I don't think James minds because this attorney is doing it himself, but the judge is jumping in, and when the judge is jumping in and objecting, It does not look great, I think.
Let me just check.
Please be done, please be done, please be done. Please be done. Vincent Van Gogh objects to any further questioning.
That's all I have for now. Thank you, Dr. Scher.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bueller. Mr. Egan?
Mr. Egan, thank you for only having one post-it note of redirect.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Bless you.
Dr. Scher, we'll just be real quick here. Did
One
anything
post-it
Mr.
note.
Bueller asked you change your opinion that Ms. Paltrow's account is consistent with the laws of physics to your
Are
understanding?
James's
and
glasses a
Mr.
little
Ramon's
navy
is
blue? Do they
not?
match the blue with the
That
suit and the
remains the
whole
same.
thing?
Thanks.
Mr. Bueller?
Bueller?
I think you said this before, that you're an expert in the laws of physics, but you're not an expert in
Just sit down, Bueller.
medical medicine or
Medical medicine?
orthopedics
Is it like lawful law?
or neurology, correct?
I am a biomechanical engineer. I am not a medical doctor. I do not diagnose and treat, but I do look at what forces and what motions create damage to the body.
Thank you.
I just don't treat that damage to the body.
You may step down.
Thank you.
Thank you. May I call your next witness?
Next witness.
We call Paul Baugher, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Your Honor, before Mr. Baugher comes up to testify,
What?
we may want to take a 5 or 10-minute
Why?
break. I want to address something with the court outside the presence of the jury.
We'll have to take one shortly anyway, so let's go ahead and do it now.
Okay, Paul Baugher. Let's see what they're going to take up outside the presence of the jury, shall we? Medical medicine is like lawful law. I think medical medicine is like lawful law. I'm going to have to send this clip to my sister-in-law, who's an orthopedic surgeon, and be like, what do you think of this?
Ms. Van Orman?
Your Honor, pursuant to our motion in limine, Mr. Baugher's testimony is going to be significantly limited in this case. The problem that I am foreseeing is that, I could be wrong, but it appears to me that counsel is going to try and use Mr. Baugher to then
Bootstrap?
describe some further animations and place individuals on that animation, and I have significant concerns with that for a number of reasons. Number one, Mr. Baugher's not qualified to do that. He didn't take any kind of measurements, calculations, determinations of speed, force, physics, etc. in this case. But in addition, in his report, he does not make any mention of where people were, where they were placed. This would any kind of discussion of him talking about the animation, and if he was responsible for putting the people somehow on that animation. He does not describe that in his report. He doesn't talk that in his report regarding participating in an animation. He provides no diagrams in his report, no discussions of where people were or weren't. So I don't think that it would be appropriate for him to even deal with the animation, or that his testimony that he's the one that was responsible for putting, say, Apple here and Moses here and that type of thing. That would go significantly beyond anything he did in his report. So that's my concern, and I wanted to address that now rather than a sidebar.
Thank you.
Better to address it now than a sidebar.
Sure. Mr. Egan?
The judge is
Yes, Your Honor.
likely
So,
looking for his.
I think our response
likely
would be
looking
that
for his.
Mr. Baugher
ruling.
has pored over the records in this case, and he has, in producing these animations, made certain assumptions about what testimony might be consistent with the illustration that the animations provide. He can be very clear with the jury that he's assuming certain facts. He's not finding these facts. He's assuming that they're true. They come from the record. He can explain that they're rough illustrations. He's not made measurements and decided that, yes, this is exactly 30 feet. He can be subject to cross-examination on any point that might be inconsistent with testimony. He can explain that he chose to assume these facts and not other facts, and that if you assumed other facts, you might get different illustration.
Arguing over the demonstratives.
And then he'll explain that the assumption of various facts that are shown in the animations are consistent with his understanding of ski collisions and skiing generally, which he has decades of experience, not just with skiing himself, but with investigating accidents, collisions, hundreds and hundreds of them for various purposes, mostly not litigation, mostly to figure out risk management concerns, deciding whether certain skiers have to be banned from
witness
a
testimony.
certain resort or a ski area. He has ample experience to be able to discuss how to consider various factors in evaluating a ski collision like this that has complex testimony that's not all consistent. And the jury, in our view, needs to hear from a ski expert that knows how to do that and can explain to them the principles that he uses. He will not tell the jury this is likely what happened, or that I have found that this must be the case. He'll say, I've assumed these facts. He can be very clear about what he's assumed, and then use that animation to explain to the jury how to think through the case, given his ample experience with evaluating ski collisions.
So, Mr. Egan, I guess I'm still not hearing an expert opinion from Mr. Baugher, is it?
Is he an expert?
That would have helped the jury. I mean, everything that I'm hearing has him weighing evidence, has him making decisions about what may have happened
to the shoes
on
of the
that
jury.
day. And that's invading the providence of the jury. It's not really going to help them.
Your Honor, I see it as, like, say, a medical malpractice case, which I'm more familiar with. If a certain set of facts might be in the record about what happened in a surgery, for example, then a surgeon, expert surgeon who has lots of experience reviewing
comes in as an expert,
records, but also doing the surgery himself, knowing what the training is, looks at the records, looks at the various claims, and you, as you said in your order ruling, I believe yesterday, can say, if we assume these facts, given my expertise, I can say this makes sense, or this is consistent with my understanding of surgery. And so my proposal is that we use Mr. Baugher in that sort of way, where he can help the jury understand, given what he knows about skiing and given what he's seen in the record, that there are certain principles you can use if you assume certain facts to
why are people just standing? Sit down. The
to
jury's
evaluate
in the room.
a certain collision such that you're applying some rational principles rather than just generally going with a certain gestalt feeling about what someone said. You're actually trying to rationally go through how to evaluate a ski collision, which again he has decades and decades of experience doing. And he won't say,
chosen these lawyers.
he'll say to the jury, you're the ones that have to decide what happened. This is a very difficult case to decide.
Isn't your medical malpractice expert example, isn't that an expert that's coming in to evaluate
the records,
whether the standard of care was breached?
Yeah, well, so yes, usually we would offer an expert in that way, but given your ruling, I'm just trying to use that as an analogy where we could still use expertise that would help the jury without rendering that final opinion, telling them, as an expert, you should do this, and I'm really the one that knows because I have tons of experience. Instead, he can say, here's how I evaluate these accidents, and let me show you how to do it. And then they have rational principles that come from his field of skiing and ski accident
This witness might get
evaluation that help them, that they have not heard. They haven't heard from any ski expert that has provided to them that kind of a rational layout for analyzing the various complex claims in this case. And I think that would help them.
Sure. And I think in my, I guess, preliminary ruling on this witness the other day, yesterday, I'm losing track of the days here.
Same.
I think I stated that he is qualified, certainly has qualifications, and can testify as to what a reasonable skier would do or not do in a certain hypothetical set of facts.
He's gonna
But in terms
limit-
of applying and weighing the evidence in this case, I think that goes
can't
too
do that.
far.
Okay, so,
Limit.
but if we showed the animation and we made it clear to the jury that we're assuming certain facts, we're not.
Then that's a
We're not
hypothetical. That's what he's
weighing
trying to
them. We're
argue.
just saying, look, let's take these facts. We're assuming them. We're not saying that they're proven. We're just showing you how to analyze the facts, assuming these various parts of the testimony are true. That would be too
Why
far,
are
you're
people
saying?
talking in the
That
gallery
sounds
while
like
court's
closing
on the
argument.
record? That does
It doesn't sound like what a witness can offer under Rule 702.
James,
He can
You're
talk
going to
about-
build a
I mean,
bridge
he's
too
an
far,
expert in
sir.
skiing. He can talk about skiing dynamics. He can explain what a snowplow is, what parallel
explain
skiing is.
what people's duty is.
What the rules of skiing
road
are generally understood to be. But in terms of taking that next leap, I don't think he can say, I've looked at the deposition testimony and I can tell you who's at fault here, or I can tell you who did something wrong here. I just don't see, I think that's the jury's responsibility, and I don't want
Weighing the
a witness
evidence.
telling the jury how to make its decisions or how to make a decision that's either an ultimate issue or one of the issues leading up to that ultimate issue.
So even him explaining his process for how to evaluate ski collisions would be too far?
To what end? Why does the jury need to know how he evaluates a ski collision?
They need to determine how
Because
they evaluate it.
evaluating ski collisions is a complex matter and he has expertise as to how to do that.
Car collisions are complex too.
You
Juries
know,
decide
right
that
now,
all
I'm
the
just
time.
talking or I'm responding to your question sort of in a vacuum. I don't know what it is he's offering.
If it would help, I could give you kind of an example. Like,
Sure.
if I could say, Mr. Baugher, when you evaluate ski collisions, and you've evaluated, they have established that he's evaluated hundreds of ski collisions. Have you ever evaluated collisions where there's conflicting testimony? Yes. When you approach that testimony, what are principles you use to evaluate that? And he can explain those principles. He doesn't have to talk about the facts of this case. He can explain, here are
thought
these
process?
principles. I don't think the jury's heard that. I think it would be helpful to them. I think it would be rational and it wouldn't be
So you're
overbearing.
asking him how he evaluates credibility.
Ding, ding, ding.
I guess that's true.
How does he
Yes.
reconcile different accounts?
Right, but we
Yes.
wouldn't, if
That's what the
given
jury
your ruling,
does.
we wouldn't go into applying it to this case. We would just give them the rational principles that would help them weigh the evidence. It
plaintiff's
wouldn't tell
lawyers
them
have to
how
sit
do it.
down
It
and
would
be
just
quiet,
give them a framework
'cause the
for
judge is
doing it,
going their
which only
direction.
he can provide. They have not heard from somebody that does this for a living, has done it, again,
And how
not
does
just.
that vary from what the jury does? If you look at the credibility
Yep,
jury
James is in a
instruction that I've
corner.
already read. for
Sorry,
example,
James.
And how does that differ? I mean, where it talks
You're
about
gonna lose a lot of
conflicting
this
testimony,
argument.
How does what he's offering provide any specialized knowledge? I consider that generalized.
Yeah,
knowledge.
so I don't think he would just talk about, general principles of evaluating witnesses.
Well,
He would
that's what
talk
you
about
said.
particular aspects of a ski slope
Like-
or
like
witnesses
what?
on a. If he were here right now, he could help me. Yeah, right, he is right here.
So when ski accidents happen, and people go to the ground, their skis get released. I could see that as specialized knowledge, just
Right.
like this witness
Yeah.
offered something along those
Yeah,
lines.
no, that is an important thing. He can
But
explain
in
that.
terms of, this skier said such and such, and this skier said such and such, but this is how I evaluate that aspect of it, I think that's invading the providence of the jury
Okay.
on deciding how to weigh testimony.
Okay. I mean, for the record, if I may, Your Honor.
I don't disagree.
I think we put this on before, but in case we didn't, we believe the motion to exclude Dr. Baugher or limit his testimony is untimely, and that
You
Greg
probably put
Scortis,
that on the
their
record.
expert, whose report does much the same thing that Mr. Baugher's report does, should be limited in the same way. And again, just renew our request that he be able to speak to the jury about his evaluation of the ski accident.
So just again, my sort of ultimate conclusion on what I'm hearing from on this motion to reconsider and on the response from the defense is that it's up to the jury to decide ultimately what the parties did,
Yep.
where the parties were positioned, and who ran into whom. So it's up for the jury to make those decisions. So as long as this witness steers clear of those areas, that's the main emphasis of my preliminary ruling, and I'll have to hear what's being offered.
Do you mind, I know I'm not an old man, but my memory has failed me. This three again, who hit whom going backwards?
It's up to the jury to decide ultimately what the parties did.
Right?
In other words, leading up to, during, and after the accident. It's up for the jury to decide that.
This is a great question. Bella,
Where
we're going to do that in a minute.
And various experts have given them some helpful information, like the biomedical expert gave testimony as to what the biomedical evidence reflected that would help the jury make that decision. Just like this past witness gave the jury some biomechanical information that will help the jury make their decision about what happened in that accident, what the parties did, where the parties were positioned, and who ran into whom.
And the reason that you see Mr. Baugher as doing something different than, like, say, Dr. Scher just did, who took the jury through assuming these various facts. I'm not telling you that this account is true. I'm
And
just
that's
taking the
really
as an
what they're
assumption.
going to have to
What
do,
Ms.
is
Paltrow said
trust
was
the
true.
jury
Let's
to
analyze it.
understand this.
You're seeing Mr. Baugher as different, and I'm not totally sure how. Do you mind
Well, because
explaining
the
that?
plaintiff's witness.
He doesn't see this as specialized
applied
expert knowledge.
Biomedical principles.
That's specialized
in a
knowledge.
methodical way to the different versions, and then handed the jury that
That's
information.
expert information
The biomechanical expert
outside
that just
of common
testified
knowledge.
applied biomechanical principles to the different versions and gave that information to the jury to help them make a decision.
Okay, so
And what I see this witness doing is reading different accounts and
And weighing-
reconciling them
right.
and wanting to give
Which is
his
the jury's job.
reconciliation to the jury, which I think is too close to what the jury actually does. It doesn't provide any, it doesn't help
Expert
the jury
knowledge.
from an expert standpoint.
Right. He's-
Okay, so it sounds like you're not persuaded that,
No.
that, you know, of our position, which is that he has skiing
dropping
expertise
my
similar to
fidgets.
like a biomechanical engineer has.
Correct.
And can apply that to the facts in a way that would
Correct.
provide the jury with some, again, rational scheme to assess the accident that they wouldn't have
Principles and
otherwise.
methods Under Rule 702.
Correct.
Okay,
And the same is likely going to hold true to Mr. Scortis' testimony.
okay. And you say likely,
I haven't, I
So
mean,
you
I've
haven't
heard you make kind of a motion. I haven't heard from the other side whether they're opposing that in some way.
I see, you're just waiting till you have
But
more
I mean, if
specifics.
he's the same type of an expert, and I realize that he may not be a risk manager, and he may not be a ski accident investigator for an employer, but it sounds like his testimony is along the same lines.
Yeah, at some point, James, you're going to have to cut your losses because you're burning court
So,
time.
just in terms of guidance on this ruling, you mentioned the bindings, and I apologize if we're going long. I just want to make sure that we,
Understand and don't end up at
Specialized
sidebar.
knowledge
right, so
that can
you-
help the jury in making their decision.
So would, in your mind, would something
judge is
like
very patient with
recognizing that
this.
the positioning of the skiers, if one skier is uphill, applying a certain knowledge of skiing,
He should
that
understand
would suggest
the
certain
provenance
things
of
about
experts
the
a little
accident.
better,
Would
though.
that be out of bounds?
Rob,
I guess I have to hear the question.
yep,
but
it's going to go
it
question
sounds
by
like you're
question. Be very careful,
Getting back
James.
into making conclusions based
danger.
on an investigation. If you lay out some hypothetical facts
This
to
is not
say
an
if this skier was
expert
here and this
that
skier
way.
was here, from a skiing standpoint, and then ask questions based on that, I could see that, but
Okay.
it's feeling a little too hypothetical right now.
Yep.
Sure. Okay. Thank you, Your Honor. Thanks for your patience with my questions.
Sure. Ms. Van Orman?
The judge has been very patient.
Circling back to why I raised this in the first place, is the concern with the animation. And so what I don't want, because Mr. Baugher apparently had some involvement in creating the animation, which was not designated in his report, nor was any mention on what his involvement was, what he did for it, how he placed anybody anywhere. There's no discussion of any of that. I don't think that it's appropriate for him to comment on the animation and to say, well, yes, I saw that, this helps me because I'm the one who helped to place these people there. It would have been, again, by reading the depositions
that's
and
not in the
applying, which is what the
designation.
jury needs to do. So I would say he can't even talk about the animations because that just goes beyond the scope of his report, anything that he's done in the case.
I would agree.
Unless the foundation can be set.
No, Owens.
I haven't heard anything that would establish a
Owens?
foundation. I've
We
heard
have
no
been
problem.
Stop
broadsided,
it.
Your Honor. We had a 37-page report produced a long, long time ago. There was a motion deadline.
James handled
that
it.
We respected months
Oh,
ago.
gosh.
These issues were argued 45 days ago, and then immediately before our witness is going to take the stand with this 37-page report, filing, and that guts half of his opinions. I don't think it's fair, Your Honor. I can't even read the darn thing. I'm focused on getting my witnesses ready. The untimeliness is very prejudicial to us, Your Honor, because we can't properly brief this in days.
Okay. I've already ruled that
Yes,
that the initial
you've
motion was
lost.
timely, and I made a ruling on the initial motion. The subsequent motion was not untimely. The court has agreed to reconsider the motion.
'Cause the motion
and
was
that's what I've
made.
done, and I don't feel that it's unfair or unduly prejudicial. You were aware of
Thanks,
the issues
Owens.
with his report
You knew.
long ago.
But you ruled in our favor before.
What I
And he
ruled was
reconsidered.
that the initial motion didn't give the court enough to grant it.
Because they
That's not ruling in your
And so
favor.
then there was a
poorly
motion.
briefed it.
Then there was a motion to reconsider that gave the court more information, and I can see that it would be, I mean,
You can't
Which, that's not the
poorly
way to
brief
you don't want
a
to,
motion.
this would create an appealable issue. Do you want to do that for your client, is my question.
No, but I don't want to. They poorly brief something, the judge denies it. Then right before the testimony, they better brief it, and now we lose.
This judge does not love Owens.
That's what trial is. This is
Sir,
trial.
Welcome. Welcome
Things
to the
happen.
jungle, Owens.
The points that were raised in the motion are valid points. They're sound. They're based soundly in the law, and I want to make sure that what the jury hears is sound.
Do you want to
and
create an
not
appealable
subject
issue for your
to
client?
Any more risk of
Counsel?
appeal than possible.
Woo!
We'll take 5 before the
Yeah,
jury comes
just
back.
get up and walk off, Your Honor. The judge is like, welcome to what your job is. Oh, Owens. James was asking for appropriate clarification. I think James was trying to make sure that he was absolutely clear on the narrow scope of what this witness is going to be able to testify to. And I'd paused this earlier, so now I'm catching us back up. So we are now on a 5-minute break. I'm going to just, let me make sure that I haven't accidentally paused the court feed. So all of you are like, Emily, the judge is back. And I'm like, what? Make sure that we're not paused. That's very interesting. So let's just talk about what happened right before the court finally took a break. The attorneys were arguing on the record about the next witness. The next witness has been presented as someone who has a expertise in skiing in some ways, but the plaintiff has asked to narrowly curtail this witness's testimony and not allow this witness to get into evaluating the demonstrative exhibits, because this witness is not an expert in the way a scientific expert is. You can only bring in expert testimony under 702. Should I grab my book? No, Emily, just keep going. You can only bring in expert testimony when it is experience needed outside the experience of the jury. So juries can weigh who they believe. Juries can decide how to evaluate testimony. Juries can make all of those decisions. So when you have somebody propose to come in and testify that, well, I believed this more than I believed that, it's starting to invade the functionality and the provenance of what the jury does. So that's what James and the judge were going back and forth on is, okay, well, if we're curtailing this witness narrowly, what can this witness testify to? Hypotheticals, their experience with dealing with ski collisions, etc. They want to use this witness to tell the jury, this is how we decided it. And that is improper use of this witness because the judge does not find this witness to be a proper expert like a biomedical or biomechanical engineer and things like that. So this witness is going to be narrowly tailored. We'll probably see a number of objections. At the end, after the court has been very clear and the court has made it very clear that he does not view this witness as an expert, it's clear from the court's record that this motion came up during motion practice. And remember, there's timing to all of this and there are deadlines to all of this. So this came up, the court didn't have enough information to rule and really said, I don't have enough information to rule. We'll wait till we get closer to trial. As we get closer to trial, we now see Owen saying, well, their motions were late. And the judge is like, no, the motions weren't late. It was properly briefed. You knew of the issue. There's no prejudice to you and your client. And Owen's like, well, Your Honor, it's unfair. Literally, this is like the fourth time he said, well, Your Honor, it's unfair. It's trial, my guy. And Your Honor, this is unfair. He goes, well, this would create an appealable issue. Is that what you want for your client? Basically saying, Owens, you're not following the law. I am. Why is the judge back on the record? Why is the judge back on the record? Why are you back? That wasn't 5 minutes. What are we doing? Why are the other feeds not back? I hate the audio on this feed. I'm just gonna wait. I'm just gonna wait it out and see. The court's on the bench. I'm gonna finish explaining while the court is writing up his notes. And it really is just the judge writing up his notes at this point. So Owen starts complaining that this is untimely and everything else, and the judge just says this is the law under 702, which is the rule regarding expert witnesses, etc. So the judge is not having any of it, and the judge is protecting this case. The judge just asked if they're ready for the jury. So we'll be back on the record in just a moment. Do you mind, Emily? Do you mind if Emily draws on your board? We have a different color. I only use purple. The judge is making his notes. I don't think the judge is changing his mind. And I don't think the judge has changed his mind. I think the judge is right. This is not an expert. You can't just have some rando come in and say, well, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this is who I think is right. You should think what I think. You have to bring in experts, and they have to be experts with specialized knowledge.
I see that.
All right. We are now back in court and on the record. Let's make sure we're caught up to real time.
Ready for the jury?
Bring the jury.
Yes.
Say it. Say bring the jury. Your Honor, can beg the chat's indulgence, Your Honor. Can you please say bring the jury? Your Honor, Your Honor, Your Honor. We beg the court's indulgence. Please say bring the jury. All right, I'm going to keep answering questions. So Owens
Okay.
does come across as a complaining.
I didn't hear anything, so they went to get the jury. I see that.
Question, why even have this witness testify if there are this many issues? I don't know. And I think they should have a conversation and rethink it. But they want to bring in a ski expert. Question, but not, you were great on CBS and looked beautiful. Well, thank you, little white lie. I appreciate that. I've had to say no to a few TV interviews lately just so we can make sure I can make sure I still get my content done here. But CBS was fun yesterday morning. There were times I felt like I wasn't as smooth. I am after doing 6 weeks of Murdaugh, I am definitely a little bit fatigued. Tamara said, I can't believe I didn't think I would be interested in this trial. This expert is the definition of find your passion and live it. Tara, there's always interesting bits in trial. There's always boring bits in trial. We always learn something new. But all the ski experts I found very interesting as well. The way they evaluate things, the different
Thank you.
fields of study.
Mr. Owens, you may proceed.
James again.
Okay, Mr. Egan?
Thank you, Mr.
Baugher,
Egan.
our ski expert.
Thank you. Mr. Baugher?
Oh, Mr. Egan, thank God for you. Every time the judge says Mr. Owens,
You
my
could
heart
walk right over
sinks.
here to the clerk, and she will swear you in as a witness.
Mr. Egan is the one who's dealing with all of the experts, it
Do you
seems.
swear that the testimony you are about to give in the case now before the court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God? Thank you.
Thank you, TJ.
Good morning.
This jury could still
Would you
find
start
50-50
by,
and say everybody's at fault.
Sitting down and then
Or they're
giving
half
the
and half
jury
at
your
fault.
full name and spelling it.
Yeah, I like James too.
Once you
He
get
should have known
situated.
more about the experts though, but he was fighting to keep this witness's testimony in there. I think they also could have done
Yes,
more
my
of
name
this.
is Paul Baugher, Paulbagher.
I spelled that totally wrong.
Your Honor, I note that my computer is still there. Do you mind if I grab it?
I think they could have done a lot of this. I think they could have done a lot of this with the ski lesson instructor. I wonder why they didn't. Lindsay said those drawings are so very typical of an engineering professor diagrams. This is a surprising amount of subtle humor. I
Mr.
really
Baugher,
enjoyed
thank you for being
the
with us.
diagrams this morning. I was delighted.
Thank you.
Will you tell the jury what you understand to be your role here today?
Yes, I was retained to do an investigation to consider all the circumstances involved in the accident that you've been sitting through here. And
We have been
I've
sitting
also
through
been
it.
asked to, if asked to assume certain facts, I could give opinions as to how that might work. Would that be plausible? Do I see this? I think maybe a lot of what I would
Agreed.
hope to add today would be to sort of give the operational side, the skiing side, the things that we observe in accidents, and when we evaluate them, what we learn and what I pass on. I do a lot of teaching and training, which we can get into, but those are, I think, the sort of the key areas.
So do you have expertise to
They can
help
designate fact and
educate the
expert.
jury
I think
about
they
the
can
skier
cross-designate
responsibility
witnesses.
code?
Yes.
But
Or
it's
just
been a while
reasonable
since I've
principles
even
about
had to
how
consider
to
it.
ski?
That's a very good point.
Yes.
Kelly,
Um,
Gwyneth
what
testified
about
on
how-
Friday.
Like, for example,
I have that on my playlist.
Bindings
So, Friday.
and ski equipment might factor into how they might work in a
But
certain
can't
collision.
they? Rob, you might know better than
Yes.
me. Can't they cross-designate
And
witnesses
why do
as
you
both?
why do you have
fact and expert?
confidence that you can explain that and
I think James does have braces.
with authority to the jury?
I have Invisalign because I can't handle
Well, I've been
actual
involved in
braces, so good for him.
working professionally in the ski industry for 37 years, and I've
That's fair.
primarily focused on the outdoor, on snow, skiing, more specifically ski safety. That involves ski accidents. I do a lot of ski accident investigation. I mean, literally thousands and thousands.
This witness's
And
testimony
I've done
is
a lot of collisions.
limited.
I've worked on a lot of collisions, and I haven't just done it at one ski area, my home ski area, but I actually had 4 ski areas that I did risk management oversight for, and I'm primarily a patrol director at my base, but then I moved into more supervisory roles that started to involve other ski areas as well, including one in Canada, one here in Utah that you're probably familiar with, Brighton. And those experiences of looking at these accidents in a variety of locations has given me quite a bit of information I can use to A, do the day-to-day use of that. Do we need to address certain issues on the hill? Do we need to remove a skier, for example, if somebody's unsafe? In bad collisions and bad accidents, we really do need to learn as much as we can. We get medical feedback. We just consider a lot of information. And then the last piece of that is I pass a lot of that on. I've been training and teaching people in the ski industry about accident investigation, skier collisions, skier safety for the last 20 years. And so I've been all over on that.
Do you have any higher education?
Yes, I have a degree in economics.
And what about certifications that are related to ski sports or skiing?
Yes, I would have a number of certifications. I'm not sure how many of them would bear directly on the ski accident part, but I'm an EMT, an instructor
Thank you,
of
Brandon.
outdoor emergency care, a licensed blaster, an aerial blaster, which means we can use explosives from helicopters and mostly for avalanche
Sorry,
control. Well, I
you
guess
grabbed
only
my
for
attention
avalanche
at
control. If there's anything
explosives
else,
from
that'd
helicopters.
Probably be a big problem for me. I'm sure my license doesn't say that.
Explosives from
and then I have a
helicopters had
number
my
of
attention.
schools that I've attended, avalanche schools and various ski risk management type things. And then, as I said, really the
Helium,
last
and the jury
20,
may agree with
25
you.
years of my career, I've been mostly teaching and training others, whether it's in the National Avalanche School, which we actually just held here in Utah in the fall.
One
or,
Gypsy, I like this judge a lot. I think
consulting
he's been
for
very
ski
fair.
areas, working with the National Ski Areas Association on national safety campaigns. The National Ski Patrol System is on the National Safety Board, and so there's a
I
lot
think the
of
judge has been
related
fair
things.
to both sides.
But I mean, I think that's the gist. I've been involved in. I like to even say, as I've been referred to as an expert in this for a long time, and I've done a lot of trials and testimony on ski cases. But I always think of myself too as a student. I'm continually learning about it. I always want to know the next thing, and you think they're all the same, and a lot are fairly similar, but there's always something
I always
new
want to
and
know
something
more.
different. So
Same.
Have you ever, in your
I don't have enough
capacity,
time
you
to
mentioned
read
of
more. Is my biggest
reviewing
problem right
cases
now.
for litigation or giving testimony in court cases, have you ever done that in Utah before?
yes, I had a.
When was that?
Well, I've had a number of skier collisions that I've investigated here now with Brighton. That's more my oversight, and I'm reviewing the accident records. And then when we have a bigger collision that has more issues and so forth, or a ski accident for that matter, I'll get involved and I'll start going through a review much like we've been doing here. And I had a trial, I think 3 or 4 years ago in Salt Lake. Solitude, the ski area, was involved.
I don't know if we want to know about that.
Park
Solitude's
City,
what
I've
I'm
had
gonna
a
need
couple
after
of
this trial.
collisions at Park City that I've done expert reports and so forth. But those
He
cases
knows his
settled.
skiing.
But anyway, so yeah, and that's again, I think what's different about what I do than say maybe what Mr. Graff would have been doing when he was the patrol manager, is that I do travel and I do go to all the different parts of the country, including the East Coast, for accidents and the investigations. And skier collisions happen
Are
basically
you an accident
everywhere. And
reconstructionist
that's
for
been
ski collisions?
I'd say I've probably had 20 cases that have gone to trial that I've been involved in. Maybe they haven't all gone to trial, but at least that have been in litigation.
That's not that many.
And are you aware of any studies, or have you done any measurements of how common ski accidents might be?
Well, I'm certainly, I work with people who actually are involved in the, what we call the 10-year interval studies, and there's been 4 10-year interval studies about ski accidents and the
those?
mechanisms of ski accidents. I look at that data. I also, excuse me, I think you heard Dr. Scher earlier describing the ISSS, the
Ice.
Snow Sports and Trauma.
Sorry, that was me joking.
So the International Congress for
no,
Ski
not sorry.
Safety on that, and I've
joke
presented
was
there.
worth it.
I've presented I can't probably keep track of all the different meetings and groups that I've presented to, but these are bigger groups, the ISSS, and then
like I know too
I
much.
also present papers and do peer-reviewed work. The International Snow Science Conference, ISSW workshop, hasn't, that was dreamed up in the 80s. They haven't lost that part of it. But it's a conference. It's an international conference, 1,000 people there. I do reports on things that happen, ski area problems, in fact, one
Wait, finish
ski
your
problem
sentence.
with the snow immersion suffocation. I don't know if you've heard of that. You might have heard of tree well fatalities. Did you remember? We just had one here in
Is he
in
looking at the
Utah.
jury to nod?
And so that would be something I would gather data on. I talked to the general manager of the ski area that it happened adjacent to, and talked to the folks from the Avalanche Center here, Forecast Center. And they have some educational outreach that they do. And I basically was at the front of the snow immersion piece. I helped coin that term, and we did it. I keep a database. I keep doing
I have no idea what he's
doing
talking about.
research. I see you have another
Yeah.
question coming.
No, it's
But
fine. Well, I was just,
it's
if you
an
don't
idea.
mind me interrupting, so when it comes to measuring the how common ski collisions
It sounds
might
like he
be
does it a
on
lot.
in a given region or in a given place at a given time. Do you have any particular data you can offer?
Yeah, well, certainly. If you looked at, I mentioned those interval studies, the rate in skiing accidents, the total skiing accidents of collisions is about 6 to 7% of all of the reported accidents. Now, I'm sure there's a lot of collisions where people just bump into each other and go on their way, probably a lot more of those. But ones that result.
Your Honor, I'm just going to object. I'm fine if this is just background foundation on Mr. Baugher's experience, but this goes beyond anything contained in his report.
I see it as background, so overruled.
Yeah, that's fine, as long as it's background.
Thank you,
Oh,
Your Honor.
Sanderson is back.
Yes, so that rate at
plaintiff is back
6
in
to
court.
7% is sort of uncanny from interval to interval. So 40 years of data now, and it's still the same. And now I use that metric
Interesting.
myself because I'm looking at the 4 ski areas that I'm supervising, and then the other ski areas that I go to when I do investigations, I look at their data. Because the first thing I want to know is what is that rate here? And it can vary throughout the season based on weather conditions and snow surfaces and so forth. But, that's a metric is, are we doing okay? Do we have a problem? Is there something that needs to be addressed? And so I look at it, well, in all accidents, there's all kinds of data you can get from accidents, not just skier collisions, in that way. And then we try to pass that information on. Sometimes we target it towards safety outreach. What you can look at a lot of safety stuff on the National Ski Areas Association website that anybody can log on to and look at the safety pages, and a lot of stuff on collisions that's in there and skiing safely and so forth. I had a lot to offer in the production of all that.
Thank you. Do you have any knowledge of what the rate of ski collisions might be in Utah? How common they are?
Yes, and it would be almost identical. Yeah, there
So
might
it
be,
is a pretty
again, minor
consistent
variations
rate.
from ski area to ski area. But if
Interesting.
you looked at Deer Valley, for example, which I did, and I asked this question during my site inspection, and their rate is just right in there. It's probably 6%, 7%.
How many collisions, and I'm talking not ski accidents, but collisions where 2 skiers are hitting against each other, how many collisions like that have you investigated, evaluated in your career?
Yeah, I looked through sort of
No,
back through the
evaluated,
accident
not
review
looked
data that I
through,
keep.
evaluated.
And to just look at what you saw the other day, the incident report form, and maybe
This
it's
guy
got
very much
something
likes
like
to
an additional
explain.
patroller comment or a ski instructor's incident report. I looked through that and I figured there have been about 4,000 of those that I've reviewed out of about 44,000 accidents with just the incident report form that I've looked at. That's all accidents.
That's a lot
But
of
collisions, about 4,000. And then things that really got more investigated where there was things like we're doing here, 550 is, so that's it's a lot of accidents and a lot of collisions
In those collisions,
over a long period of time.
Sorry.
Sorry, I
No,
just
you're
wanted to
good.
make,
Yes.
and nobody will think skiing is safe anymore. I
Yeah.
want to finish that.
So
He was like, over a period of
when you've
time, go skiing.
done
Skiing
those
is dangerous, though, so
evaluations.
that's part of the point here.
What is your role? What are you trying to accomplish as you evaluate those accidents?
Well, sometimes we need to find the cause. Mostly we want to know the cause, and certainly
James would
that's
have
how you
known
can
this was a
target
chatty
prevention.
witness, and he's
But
going to
we
let him
also want
chat.
to learn circumstances. Sometimes we have really bad injuries in these collisions, and it's important for
Sometimes
us to
they're
make
fatal.
sure we know, is there somebody at fault? Are people meeting the responsibilities? And so we're looking at that all the time, and part of that is we want to make sure, since we're all responsible as skiers, that includes the ski areas, me, you, if you're skiers, that we share safety and we all do it together and we all have responsibilities. And if one of us is not doing our job, people get hurt. And so
And that's known by these
we need
skiers.
to evaluate
Both of these skiers are
fault
experienced enough
at
skiers
times,
to know
and
that.
we maybe address some people that we actually remove from the mountain. We've had
Can you get
people go
banned
in
from
cop
mountains? It
cars,
sounds like you can.
off of the mountain. But we're serious about it. We want our skiers to know that we're serious about it, and they feel okay bringing their kids there, that we're not just turning a blind eye.
So in your evaluation of these various collisions, what have you learned about what the inherent risks of skiing are?
Skiing's
Well,
dangerous.
certainly, skiers
Do you know what else
face
is dangerous?
a
Not
variety of
subscribing
inherent
when you're
risks.
watching this channel.
And those are often
Danger.
codified
Danger.
into, especially in states that have a lot of skiing in them, like Utah or Washington State or California. You know, there's what they call like a ski safety statute in the regs.
And they
so,
need this
it
info.
will mention many times, it'll enumerate what some of those inherent risks are. Another place you can find those inherent risks are on trail signs. Are mandatory here in Utah, that they're publicly displayed. But also
say
the
slow
ticket
down.
back, sometimes that varies from place to place. But do you want me to list any of the inherent risks? or-
Sure, yeah, just to educate the jury, given your experience investigating these various collisions and just your experience as a long-time advanced skier, what are those inherent risks?
Objection, Your Honor, relevance.
Overruled?
Yeah, this is relevant. Owens?
Thank you.
Let
Yes,
James do his
so
flow.
things that you encounter as a skier, things that you could likely have a problem with if you weren't
Other
paying
skiers.
attention and weren't following your role, your duties of things that we would identify under things like the Ski Responsibility Code, which we can talk about. But terrain changes, forest growth, bare spots, things that you might run into, objects, lift towers,
Trees.
grooming machines, snowmobiles. We try to keep those off the hill when people are around. But, you know, that's part of the sport. People need to get, lift maintenance people need to get around the mountain. So
What about
snowmobiles would be in there.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, yes, go ahead.
I was just going to say, what about inherent risks relating to ski
James
collisions?
is
Yeah,
trying.
and that's where I was coming to. So I wanted to give you
James
the
is
broad
trying.
brush and then say,
Oh,
and
gosh.
things like inbounds
James is trying to keep
avalanches,
him
you
narrow.
can actually get, even if they do
This is gonna be a
the
fight.
mitigation, you can actually get into an avalanche inbounds. And that's a risk you hadn't seen identified for a while, but about 5 or 6 years ago, we started adding that one. And collisions, skier collisions, or even collisions with lift towers and objects. But skier collisions, as we know, 6 to 7% of the accidents, we can eliminate some things, but an inherent risk you cannot. And the definition there is the risk is inherent in the sport. You cannot remove it without fundamentally altering the sport as it exists today. So that means
Sorry,
using good,
it got way too loud for me.
following our good responsibilities and
Sir?
being prudent skiers, we can reduce the risk, but we can't eliminate it.
Can you answer the question asked?
So does that mean that sometimes collisions occur despite people reasonably skiing on both sides of an accident?
Yes, that happens all the time.
And when you
So both
investigate
parties
collisions, do
could
you
be safe and it can
sometimes,
still happen,
after a thorough
'cause
review,
accidents happen.
conclude that you can't determine who was at fault?
Yes, that's common.
So just to put that in another way, in your evaluations,
My fault.
will you come to the conclusion that a certain accident is, and the evidence that you receive in gathering information about it is not clear enough for you to identify who is responsible for it?
Yes.
Ginger, I'm having the exact same thoughts you are. Shocked they're chewing up precious time using him. Yep. And he's
Let's talk about the skier responsibility code.
he's a
You mentioned that.
Yes.
long-winded
And it's been brought up before,
expert.
but since you're the ski expert,
chatty expert.
let's have you teach us about it for a second.
All
I
right.
believe it is
The rules of the road.
offense-
Remember, this is a negligence case. Duty, breach of duty are what we're looking for. Yes, I said
Thought I had
duty.
it right here.
Duty,
Yep,
breach of
it's
duty. So
offense
they're going
91.
to what is the duty
Any
of these
objection
skiers?
to that being
That's why
published? I guess
who's
I should
downhill
talk
matters
to the
so much
judge.
in this
Okay.
case.
91 is received?
I just want to see if the
Okay,
female
so
attorney
let's
for
put this
Sanderson
up on the
is
screen.
going to
It's
have
also on
this
your screen right there,
this-
Mr. Baugher.
Yeah.
is
Thank
going to
you.
be as chatty with
And
this
I'll
witness as she
turn
was
it
with
here
Gwyneth
so
Paltrow.
it's a little easier
By
to
the way, there's
see.
30,000 of you
Okay,
here.
so
Go ahead and
is
like
this
and
the skier
subscribe.
responsibility code you were referencing earlier?
It is, and it's actually changed in the last
Oop.
few years, but that's
Always stay in
the one that was in
control.
existence at the
Be able to
time of
stop
this
or avoid
accident.
other people or
Okay, got
objects.
it, 2016.
People ahead of you have the right of way.
2016
It's your
February,
responsibility
that's
to
correct.
avoid
Okay,
them.
and how do you know about this skier
You
responsibility
must stop.
code?
Well, it's key, excuse me, it's key to all of the duties that we were just talking about.
Duty!
In order for people, the skiers, for us to do our part. And it's a national code, started back in the 60s with the
I'm amusing myself
National
at this
Ski
point, Chad.
Patrol system before they had professional ski patrols at ski areas. And it's used all over North America. Canada has something called the Alpine Responsibility Code. It's very similar. It has a few more details on it. I've testified in trials in Australia talking about a code that they have, again, very similar to this. But these are basic rules of
testified
the
in
road. You have to give
Australia?
people, so
Sir, I
you can
have
put some
questions.
order into the chaos that is skiing. You know, skiing's very dynamic, as you know if you're a skier. And so you're trying to put
Skiing
some
is
basic
dynamic.
rules in that people can follow. They're common sense. And, oh, go ahead.
Do you know, are there ways that
Karina, you're already
skiers
doing
can
it. You
become
comment in the
familiar
chat.
with this responsibility code?
Yes, this is published at all ski areas. It's on trail maps typically, and you'd find them on big trail signboards too at the ski area. Websites will have it. There's all sorts of places you can go to find this, but it's everywhere.
Okay, and
It's a dynamic duty, that's right.
Let's talk about the particular points here. I'll pull them out. Maybe should we just go through them one by one? Is that okay?
Sure,
Always
however
stay
you
in
want to.
control.
Okay, so the first one, always stay in control and be able to stop or avoid other people or objects. That seems
Me when I go to
fairly
get coffee in the
common
morning.
sense.
Yes, that's if that one doesn't work,
Avoid,
the rest of
avoid.
them aren't going to work.
And then the second one maybe is more important. People ahead of you have the right of way. It is your responsibility to avoid them. Can you explain what that means for skiers?
Yes, and the presumption is when people are skiing down a run, the people in front of you aren't going to have that rear
David,
view.
I understand
like you
Australia
would.
has
You'd
snow
have-
and
You'd be
skiing.
in a better position as an
I just don't
overtaking
understand
skier
that this
to
expert
see the
is
people in
going
front
so
of you.
far
Got it.
to
Um,
so far as to testify there as opposed to an expert there.
3 is you must not
But maybe
stop
it's just 'cause he has
where
so much
you obstruct
experience
a
because of
trail
where he
or
works.
Are not visible from
Trail, that
above.
says trail.
What does that mean?
You must
Well,
not
again,
obstruct
it's
the
just
trail.
about being visible. And so if there's a breakover in the terrain and you were on the bottom side of it, the skier that's coming from above isn't going to see you. And so it's to prevent surprises. And again, if you're skiing in control, if you're following the first rule, when you're coming up to terrain changes, that's one of the things that skiers have to manage is their skiing, their,
Chelsea, yeah, my
their
coffee hasn't cooked in
speed,
either.
their rate, their course, and most importantly,
I'm gonna need
their
snacks for this
lookout.
afternoon.
That's what allows them, even if they come to a terrain change and there's let's say a small child taking his skis off on the downside of that hill, you're not going to run into him even though that person might not be following the code. You're not following it either if you just go tearing over the hill. You have to be able to be in a position to maneuver so you don't hit anything.
Okay, so if a skier were taking, are you familiar with the term GS turns?
Yes, giant slalom.
If a skier were taking GS turns, what principles here should that skier follow?
Well, with a GS turn, and again, just backing up for a moment, skiing is very dynamic. It's people that are changing positions relative to each other all the time. And people are going at different speeds. People are using different styles, and you're mentioning one of them, you know, short radius turn or a slalom versus a larger radius turn, more rounded turn, a giant slalom. And these are different styles, and there's no prescription for how you have to do it or even what your ability is, any of that. There's no speed limit. I mean, there's slow skiing areas, but there's no number. So the idea is skiers have to be able to be in control, and it's the lookout. In a GS turn, you're taking wider swaths of terrain. You're moving across more, you're using more of the available hill space. So again, if there was trail density that was suggesting maybe you should be skiing shorter radius turns, that would be a reason. But typically when people are skiing giant slalom turns, their speed is usually faster. And people that are skiing short radius turns, I mean, if they try, they can ski quickly, but most of the time, the turn is what controls your speed. So if you're making more of them, you're probably going slower.
What about, let's assume a skier is overtaking another group. They're skiing through a group that's skiing slower. What responsibility does that skier have?
Well, again, as the overtaking skier, you're looking at the rule number 2, people ahead of you have the right of way. And when you're coming into a group, you now
to be
have less
mindful.
space to maneuver. And your lookout has to be sharper because you have more things to focus on. Again, remember, everybody's not moving in unison. They're moving
Dynamically.
and people can turn suddenly. And so again, if you're a prudent skier, this isn't necessarily covered in the
The
code,
jury
but
probably
if I'm gonna
knows
make an
quite a bit
abrupt
of
turn on
this,
a
given the
crowded run,
location of this
that's
jury.
a problem for me. If I didn't look, I need to look up. You know, it doesn't say you have to look uphill, but so the code gets you just so far.
Stick to the code.
And I think, if I may,
Oh gosh, if I
one
may,
of the things
let
about
him,
the code
let James ask
is
you a question.
if you try to look at any one rule and say, for example, in a collision, because I have to look at this all the time in these investigations, or when I'm training people, I would have to tell them, never
Allison, we'll
focus
see.
on just one. That's just one part of the puzzle. There's usually something else. And if I had a penny for everything that was involved, the failure of the lookout.
Wait, no, if you had a penny, go back and
For
finish
example,
answering your thought.
if I have
Oh,
two,
the open
I might have
loops.
two skiers in a collision, and
Finish your
both are
thought.
trying to be the
The
not
chat is saying the
uh,
code is more like
uphill
guidelines.
skier. And I look at them and I'm going, but you were changing your positions, you had different speeds, you were merging and converging on each other. You both have the responsibility for your lookout. It can't just be straight
I
ahead.
wonder if they're
You have
arguing
to
for
be
50-50.
looking, and that's part of why you have to go to number one, and that's the king. And then you go through the rest of them, but you can't hang your head on just one.
I wonder
Now,
if they're
in
arguing for
some
50-50
accidents,
at
it
fault.
may be
Because that's a win for Paltrow.
really prominent, and you can weight it that way. But I'm just saying, you need to consider all of this, and the lookout you can't forget.
Right, so, is there anything, about, what can you tell us about the rules of skiing reasonably? that
Even when
relates
James
to
rephrases his
skiing
question,
within
I
your
think he does
ability?
it
Is
well
that-
and pretty
Is that one of
smoothly.
the rules?
Well, it's not a rule per se, but it is right here that you have to be in control. So that means for whatever slope you're on, whatever the snow surface might be, it might be a hard, icy day, and you're going faster, it might be a little harder to control your
Sometimes we
your
like it
speed.
hard, but not
You know,
when it
you
comes
need
to
then
icy
it's
ski
not that
slopes.
different, I guess, from driving there, because, you know, if the weather's bad and your braking distance is bad, then you have to give more room. And I think creating space is a key, but you have to ski within your ability.
Creating
and
space
you
is
want
always a
to
key.
assume that maybe not everybody's doing the same thing, and leave a margin. for
Okay,
that.
so what about if, take an example of a skier that may have certain physical disabilities? Does that skier have the responsibility to take account of those
Limitations?
limitations?
Yep.
And ski appropriately?
Yes, of course.
Let's move away from this for a second, and
My
ask
limitation
you
would be that I'd
about,
rather be in the lodge,
a
watching the
hypothetical
snow fall with the trees,
connects
a
to
hot
Dr.
cocoa with
Scher's
Bailey's
testimony. You
in
were
it.
here
That
when
is my
Dr.
limitation
Scher
to skiing.
testified
I
earlier,
was.
correct? And he talked
Love a
about
lodge.
bindings releasing. Do you remember that?
Don't want to hurl myself down a hill.
Yes.
And do you have knowledge
love that
about
Vincent Van Gogh is
how
still in the courtroom
bindings
watching.
release in ski collisions?
Yes, I do.
So if you were to assume a certain
James
skier
has been
came and
sticking
hit
to
another skier
the
directly
judge's
in the
ruling
back,
well. And I
at a
like his
high rate of
demeanor.
speed, would you expect bindings to come loose, the skis to come off the skier?
Objection, Your Honor. Lack of foundation also not contained in his report in the lease. There is nothing mentioning any binding release anywhere in the report.
Okay, ma'am,
Sustained?
you've made your point. She could have just said objection, and the court probably would have
Let's,
sustained it without all of that. Y'all, we jinxed
Let's try to
it.
take another hypothetical. Give me a second to think it through.
Hot cider is also an option. Yes, but see, here's the thing
Let's
with the
forget
après
about
ski.
bindings
I
and
don't
use
want
that
to
same
ski.
hypothetical of
So for me,
someone
it's not
skiing
après
directly
ski,
into
it's
someone
just
else's
lodge.
Would you
There will be
expect
no
that
operating.
person to launch over the next the person they hit, a couple feet down the mountain?
Same objection, Your Honor. Lack of foundation.
Sustained?
There you go. That's all we need, ma'am. That's all we need. James, sir, move on. Move on to your other points. She's right. And James is going to have to move on.
Is there a space on the hill where skiers
And I don't
where you
I don't have any problem with people who want to ski. My mother still
about it
wants to ski.
differently.
I just, after all the
if a skier
surgeries,
were
I don't want
trying
to ski.
to
I'm also
avoid
definitely not in shape to
collisions
ski.
and ski in a kind of safe and cautious place on the hill, where should that skier go?
Well, you could look for, certainly terrain within your ability, and if you want to be cautious, you'd probably want to be on easier runs. And if you were wanting to be away from more people, specifically if you're concerned about skier collisions, and runs are getting
Half
crowded
Irish.
these days.
Yes.
You know, you pick the right time, or you wait for opportunities. You can wait for traffic to go by, and then you can go. Staying on the margins of the run is usually good, because you only have one side to defend, if you will.
So if a skier were taking short radius turns on the right side of a run,
I would consider
would that be within the parameters you've just
And then
described?
operate tube.
Yes.
I don't know if I would cross him, other than to say, sir, you weren't there. And then I would sit down. I don't know if James has done much to move their case
I did cut you
forward.
off a little earlier when
but
you were talking about the
I
inherent
think
risks
they've
of
wasted their time with this witness.
skier collisions, the things you learned about what the inherent risks are in skiing, investigating collisions. I want to make sure you got out what you wanted to on that point. Was there anything else?
Well,
Me.
I mean, that's a big question.
Objection vague.
Sustained.
Yeah, it's very vague.
Okay,
Sir,
Your
is there
Honor,
anything
may I,
else you'd like to say?
Take a second to consult with my counsel. Thanks. Sure.
I don't think there's any more you need. I don't think this witness was a good use of time. This witness has told this jury that lives in Park City, Utah, that skiing is dynamic and dangerous, and that there's rules that have already been covered. I say you cut your losses, you don't use any more time, and you move on. There's nothing else that you need from this witness. There's nothing else you can ask, and the court's not going to let you do hypotheticals. So just be done. Just be done, James. Just pull out, sir. Just be done. Her cross-examination should be, sir, you weren't there. Correct? Okay. That's it. Just move on. M is saying we spent the money, we have to use M. I think that's fair. It feels like his credentials took longer than his testimony. Yes. I don't know why. I don't know. It's almost time for this jury to go to lunch.
Baugher.
Sure.
You personally went to the site of this collision, correct?
And
I did.
And were you there when Mr. Brill, maybe I should ask first.
Careful.
Do you know Mr. Brian Brill?
Oh, y'all
I
were
do.
like 10 subs
And,
away from
who is
binging
he?
at
He
712.
does animations, the ones that you've been seeing here.
Thanks, y'all.
And he does them all over. For ski accidents, I think he does other things too, but he's very, very precise
still
in
here and
laying
you
out
haven't-
the terrain and the features in the terrain. That, you know, the trees are all the right
Go ahead and
height, and the
subby sub.
shadows are correct, and all of that.
Yeah, and you were here, and you'd seen the animations before, correct?
I have.
Objection, Your Honor, this goes beyond the scope of his report. There's no mention of animations in the report.
Overruled at this point. I
And-
need to see how it's tied in.
Sure. I was just going to ask given that you've been to the site of the collision, does the animation to you accurately portray the location?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained as to relevance. It doesn't matter. It was a demonstrative of the other witness's testimony.
It can't be a demonstrative of this witness's testimony. There's no demonstratives with this witness. James, move on. Sir,
In this case,
we are all rooting for you to move on so we can go to lunch. James, we're highly I'm
review?
highly lunch motivated at this point.
I looked at all the deposition testimony, the documents, and various forms.
Danger, danger.
We did the site inspection. I did.
They
work
did
with
spend a
Mr.
lot of money
Brill
on this expert.
the animations.
I'm sure.
I talked to Mr.
Objection, Your Honor.
Graff.
Strike.
I would assume.
Relevance.
Sustained as to relevance. Why don't we take our lunch break at this time? It's just a little afternoon, and we'll take a recess and return
Get
at
it together,
1:30.
James.
Thank you.
Your Honor.
All right. I like James's approach. but it's going to be a problem. No, I see Sanderson in court after the break. I did not see him in court this morning. Um, Your Honor, I'm trying. This is possibly a big waste of time for them. They spent money on this expert. Sometimes you don't call the experts you spend money on. That is how the trial goes. Of course, the attorneys are probably going to have more things to put on the record. Paltrow always seems to leave right after
Questions?
the jury leaves.
In light of the court's earlier rulings? Okay.
The court's
We'll
like,
see you
need
back
to
at
move
1:30.
on."
Thank you.
All right. So 1:30 local time, that's mountain time. That's about an hour and a half from now. I appreciate a court with an hour and a half for a lunch break. That's fantastic. We're going to answer some questions, then I'm going to take a lunch. And once I take a lunch, we will be back after lunch. Miguelina, do you want to go ahead and populate the afternoon stream for like 1:20? I will come back a bit early and we'll go from there. All right. Court is officially on lunch. I've done some summaries along the way, so I'm just going to go in to questions now, and I'm going to let you know that we are just a handful of subs away from 711. We're at 712. We're at 711 993. So we are almost there. If you are new to the channel or new to my commentary, welcome. If you want to stay in the loop with when I am streaming and where I am streaming, and if I will send out the link to CBS and stuff in our next Law Nerd Alert. LawNerdAlert.com is our email. For those of you who have gotten Law Nerd Alerts or have signed up and not see them, make sure you go search for at EmilyDBaker.com and make sure that your email didn't send it to promotions or spam or something like that so that you see them. Oh, y'all, you did it. 712. It's going to take a minute for this counter to catch up, but I see it on my end. Thank you so much for liking and subscribing and chatting, because chatting is the thing that is the most fun, because this chat is amazing and hilarious, and I appreciate all of you for that. So look at what we did, Law Nerds. Ayo, there we go. Appreciate it. Thank you so much for doing the subscribing things. I very much appreciate it. So let us go to questions. I've been asking you to sub all day, so thank you so much for doing it. I wanted to show you the results. This will bing at some point while I am talking, and then we'll get to celebrate that. Can the judge just throw this silly case out? It's so ridiculous. Skiing is dangerous. Just accept the dangers. H.P. Lovecraft, your sentiments are not alone. There are plenty who agree with you. I wonder how many on the jury also agree with you. These are sentiments that many feel. Here's the thing. This is a negligence case. It has been through summary judgment. It is sufficient, legally sufficient, to get to a trial. People deserve their day in court, even if we don't understand why they want their day in court. Sanderson in his testimony made it very clear that he feels insulted and that he feels until he filed this lawsuit, people weren't taking him seriously, weren't taking his injuries seriously. He wants to have his day in court. Gwyneth Paltrow's been sued. There's nothing much she can do other than settle. And again, if she believes her version of events, right? She's like, you hit me. So from his perspective, I have been hit on a ski slope. I have been insulted. This celebrity has changed my life. My quality of life has gone down, and everything has changed because of this collision. How dare you, ma'am? So he is going to go to trial. From Gwyneth Paltrow's perspective on this, it is, I was hit on a ski slope, just trying to ski with my family. It was a trip where they were blending families, where her now husband's kids and her kids were getting together, a big trip for them. She was taken out on the slope and then had to take a half a day off of skiing, and it kind of changed her trip. Then 3 years later, this man gives a press conference about her and decides to sue her right before the statute of limitations runs. And she's like, Why would I settle this case? You hit me. You're saying I hit you. You're going after me. I imagine from her perspective, she believes that he is going after her because she is wealthy and a celebrity and thinks he can just pressure her into settling. So if she feels this is a money grab and he feels that his life is altered and he is insulted, of course, they are both going to want to go to trial. And that is why we are here. A jury is going to have to determine this disagreement. And that's what the jury system is for. The jurors might be annoyed as hell with it and say, you know what? I understand you want us to decide, but you're both in the wrong. Skiing's dangerous. Go away. Skmoozy said, my grandpa was recently in a solo ski accident, was concussed, broke ribs, and even broke his helmet without anyone else involved. He's fine now, luckily. I'm so glad he is fine. And that can happen. Solo ski accidents can be dangerous. So Emily, so far, what is your opinion on this trial? I'm not a fan of Gwyneth Paltrow, but she seems innocent. So in this trial, just so we're good with languaging, because I do try to help everyone understand the law, we are not in the criminal world. We are in the civil world. So we are dealing with liability, not guilt, not innocence. Who is liable? So responsibility. Who's responsible for this crash? And we are dealing with plaintiffs and defendants, not prosecutors and defendants, if that helps. What's my opinion of this trial? It's been very amusing. I think the neutral Deer Valley witness, the ski toboggan operator, was the most helpful witness for me. There are things in the plaintiff's case that don't make sense to me. There are things in the defense case that don't make sense to me. But again, everyone's perception of an accident 7 years later is a bit confusing. I'm interested to hear the rest of the testimony. I do think Sanderson has had injury. I do think Sanderson has had changes to his ability to do things because of this case. And I'm very empathetic for him. I don't know if Gwyneth Paltrow caused that, if this was a risk of skiing, or if they were just in a mutual collision, which sometimes accidents are just accidents. And it's unfortunate when an accident happens that alters your life and there's no one to blame. It just happened. I feel for him, but I'm fascinated. So now we're invested. We'll see what witnesses we get to this afternoon. Allie said, it's my birthday, and this is the best thing to wake up to. His art, it's inspired. Thanks for rocking, Emily. And I have great screenshots I'll try to post on Twitter. I'm going to go look for screenshots later. Allison, can we rewatch you and Dr. B? I had therapy. It is posted in the member spaces at lawnerdsunite.com over on Patreon. Anna said he doesn't have any medical bills. I'm a vet and no bill is given. As it is all paid for, the VA will provide any outside care, as it is all additional care if he is considered 100% rated. I don't know what his bills are. He might not have any bills and just be suing for the pain and suffering. So it's very possible that he doesn't have any bills. And we will see what happens this afternoon. Y'all keep saying Clark Kent, but all I see is Brian Descartes. There we go. Deborah said, you are so amazing. Well, thank you, Deborah, and entertaining. What about memories and dreaming? Do you just hear them as opposed to visualizing them? The dreams I remember are mostly auditory. I work with lots of students with autism. They are strong visual thinkers. Sorry, just interested. Don't apologize. We had an entire conversation yesterday about brains. I found it fascinating. We talked about visual thinking. We talked about 3D thinking. We talked about, the multiverse, I think, at some point. And we talked about having a mind's eye and not having a mind's eye. Emily's brain works in very quirky ways. And I have learned more and more the ways that I am neurodivergent and not neurotypical. My phonemic awareness, shit, absolute shit, none at all. Combine that with being dyslexic, my pronunciation of words is sometimes helpful. And sometimes my ordering of words, especially when I'm tired, is quirky. So I have lots of neurological quirks. I don't mind sharing them with you. Why? Because again, I have learned so much in my life about myself and the world around me through conversation. I feel that as humans, we are meant to converse with each other and share experiences, right? I can only imagine this is somewhat how early man discovered the things that were edible and not edible, right? It was like word of mouth. It's how you know that this is the greatest coffee mug to ever exist, because it's like coffee pot size, but it's not too high. So you're not like dunking coffee on yourself because you have to tip it all the way to the end. We learn things by sharing our experiences. And the only way that we learn about different things is by talking about them. There are so many things I didn't know existed until having conversations. My friend Warren, who is often in the chat, as Octonation, was the first one who ever said the words time blindness to me. And it was like pieces of my life clicked together, and I had the words to explain what I had been experiencing. It's the same with visualization. People are like, oh, just visualize it. I'm like, okay. I mean, do I just like run it through my brain like I'm listening to a story? When I listen to audiobooks, I don't see an image. I don't see a picture. When people do like renditions of characters from books, they're like, oh, that doesn't look like what I thought they looked like. I'm like, what do you mean what you thought they looked like? So we all learn through conversing, and we learn through sharing. I only know the experiences that I've lived and those that people have shared with me. I constantly want to understand more and understand each other better. And knowing that, I try to open up those conversations, and that's why our chat has these conversations. So I think it's great. Rotten Ralph in the chat said people see an image. Some do. Some have no inner dialogue. My inner dialogue won't shut the fuck up. I mean, it's not main character syndrome. It's just my inner dialogue. We are all unique. And the more conversations I have, and then we'll get back to questions, I promise, after we talk a little bit about neurospicy. The more conversations we have, I think the more we can be compassionate with each other, because we need to understand everyone sees the world in a different way. And I think the more compassion we have for each other, the more we can actually have conversations and understand from a place of compassion and not a place of judgment. Our brains, I think, are like all different operating systems. At one point, I think we will get to a point where it's not just neurotypical and neurodivergent, because I think our brains all operate in such diverse ways, and we're continuing to learn that there won't be a neurotypical. It's interesting because I don't think anyone's ever asked my kids when they're learning, how do you process this? How do you see this? My oldest one can like flip things around in his brain 3D when he's like building a structure or Legos or whatever and see it. I can't do that. My youngest sees and hears things differently. When there's people feel like emotionally in their body things that other people would think or see in their brain. And we all experience the world so differently. I think when we assume that people experience the world as we do, it leads to a lot of miscommunication and misunderstanding. And I think by asking questions and having conversations, we can all just do a little bit better to communicate clearly and understand each other and ask each other. These were questions I never thought of asking my kids. Like, how do you experience sound, music, smell, sight? How do you experience thinking? How do you see it in your mind? How do you experience math, etc.? So there's lots of different ways to experience the world. And there are lots of different ways to learn and remember things. So with all of that, I think conversing and asking questions is great. Emily, you need to do a show with a neuroscientist. No, I need to go see a neuroscientist to figure out all the other spicy things going on with my brain at some point. But yes, I'm fascinated by it. It goes beyond law, but I hope that we're able to all see the world not just through our own lens, but have compassion through the other ways people experience it. There's that Bing. That flashing lights is our Bing. Is it common for plaintiff to not be in court during trials like this? I don't know what's common. It sure feels strange to me. His attorneys tried to explain it, and so we'll see. So for chat who are telling me what not having a mind's eye is called, I learned that yesterday. That is something I learned from the chat yesterday. Yuri said, biology teacher laughed in my face when I asked if it is normal to hear my own thoughts as if somebody else is talking to me. That's such a rude response. It's just, let's have conversations. I don't know if any of it's normal. I think there's people that experience the world like we do, and people who experience the world differently. So if you're the plaintiff, and then we're going to Bing, if you're the plaintiff, here's my thought. If you aren't there, does it signal to the jury how much you care about the case, or that you're disinterested in the case? What does it signal to the jury? Or does it show that he's kind of obsessed with Gwyneth Paltrow and only showed up for her testimony? I don't know. All right, let's celebrate. Oh, it binged! Move your head! Law nerds, I will let you explain to our new law nerds where that is from and what that means, but we binged. Congratulations to us. Thank you. Rick said, did the ski patrol take Terry down the mountain in a different locale than the GP crash? Yes. Maybe he crashed again into large male friend. They did take him down. He skied down the mountain a bit before ski patrol was called, and none of the testimony contradicts that. Proud Mama says, behind every successful professional are organized pens and pencils. I mean, it has to be, and post-it notes. Annie said, Emily, I bought a drawer based on your recommendation, and I love it. Thank you. You're welcome. I will always tell you the stuff that works well for me and the stuff that doesn't, and why, or at least try to. He does look like Van Gogh. Anyone check his ears? His ears look good. The ears look good. Emily, have to ask, have you seen the Murdaugh documentaries, and will you be doing any videos on your opinions? Intrigued. What do you think? Josie, I have not seen them. I've seen the HBO one. I have not seen the Netflix one. Is it the Netflix one? The newer one that came out during trial, I have not seen. But tomorrow's podcast, The Emily Show, will be covering some of the new things in the Stephen Smith case and the new Murdaugh motions. At some point I will watch, and I'll probably do some members content for that, because on this channel we are moving past. Nancy said, when they approach the bench, who gets charged with the time used? It depends on the judge. In Depp v. Heard, if you asked to approach and you won, you didn't get charged time. But if you asked to approach and you lost, you did get charged time. This judge hasn't said on the record how he's doing it. What was fascinating is Owens didn't seem to understand. I wonder how many trials Owens has done. Owens didn't seem to understand that their opening and closing time was going to be taken off of the time that the court gave them, like their total time. Like there wasn't like bonus time for closing. He was like, oh, thank you, Your Honor. I was like, Owens. Isn't Bueller undermining Ramon's testimony a little bit today? I don't know which lawyer was losing. Isabel said vet affairs would want their money back one way or another. Happened in a case. I know that the VA got it back for treatment of the vet. If Terry gets back treatment, he might, it might reimburse, depending on how it's paid, it might reimburse the VA depending on what they get or what they're asked for. Tammy said, I knew this cross would be brutal to the plaintiff. You need another engineer to argue with an engineer. Attorney is arguing with ignorance of the subject. This is hilarious. That's why there's a battle of the experts. And that's why cases like this get expensive. Am I the only one who thinks the medical medicine guy seems like, I don't know which guy that was. Are we talking about the attorney or the witness? Hamley, I DM'd you on Twitter, Dr. Van Gogh's portrait compare. I'll take a look. The doc needs to frown more. Or the painter needs to smile more. Emily, how is the Baugher witness any different than the biochemic witness? Bella, I know we got to that with the judge. So I think that we got that covered based on expertise and based on whether or not he is actually an expert under the rules of evidence. Lisa, welcome to the channel. I'm glad you're enjoying it. This interview, James's mom. Let's interview James's mom. What was James like as a young man? Diane said, if I were a juror, I would be very insulted. The defense tried to make this movie very condescending. That's Diane. Thank you for sharing that perspective. It's very different to me because when they're talking about how they're going down the ski slope, I can't visualize it. So I find it very helpful. But Emily, what if I'm a spiritual witness to the accident? Can I be qualified as an expert? Undoubtedly, RK. Didn't think I'd enjoy this trial, but I was wrong. I mean, I enjoy being here with y'all. I don't know if I would enjoy this trial watching it alone. I think I enjoy watching it with the Lawnards. I don't know. I think there would be moments that I enjoyed it, but watching it with the Lawnards is really the best part for me. Lawyer, said that Owens runs trials like a deposition. True. It feels that way. Elaine did the same thing, which is why I've asked how many trials has he done? It doesn't feel like a dynamic trial. James has a better trial affect and dynamic for me. So Pat's Cats, thank you for the super chat. Emily, since Deer Valley was dismissed, how can the defense use them as witnesses? Sorry, just don't understand. Brian, they are fact witnesses. They saw what happened. They were part of this event. They were percipient to this event. So they are fact witnesses. So that's how, because they were there and they saw what happened. Can civil cases get appealed? Yes, and they do. I mean, money, but yes. Jen said, I can't visualize, but I feel what it looks like. having good body awareness in space is also something I'm not great at. So if somebody's like, in yoga, we're just doing this and they describe it, I'm like, you want me to put my body in space where? But also that's probably because I can't visualize it. Temp said this is cringe. Why is the lawyer trying to out physics the engineer? Because that's what cross-examination does. Emily, if a witness's testimony is limited, do the attorneys let them know in advance the areas they can't get into? Good attorneys do. They should. They should be very clear with their witness so the witness doesn't blurt something out that causes a problem. We saw Tinsley doing this in Murdaugh outside the presence of the jury, that Tinsley was just blurting things out. So when they got to Tinsley's cross-examination, it was like 2 questions and then Barber sat down. Owen brags about his trial experience on his firm's sites, makes me even more confused based on his actions in this case. We saw that with Elaine too, didn't we? Lawyer reminds me of Lily from the Princess Diaries. Oh, I can see that. I love trials that are in my time zone. I don't have to think about the time difference. Karen, that's a fair point. Emily, humbly, I thought you were excellent on CBS. Very focused and on point. Best interview I've seen so far. Thank you so much. I will send that out in the Law Nerds alert. We will link it. I really hope someone has updated GP's wiki profile pic with the drawing from today. That would be very, very funny. That would be very funny. CJ Drake, Emily, can you read music notes? I'm always fascinated when people can do that. I can't read all music, but I only played the drums, and I also could play the drums by ear because I am pretty decent with rhythm and beats in that way, but I'm also very wired for auditory. My brain is very auditorily wired, if that makes sense. So drums were easy for me and I very much liked them. Also ADHD, drums have a whole nice kinesthetic part to it. I didn't have to blow on anything, which I very much liked. I loved everything about drums. I loved everything about playing drums. It was very fun. It was very physical. I enjoyed it. And sometimes you could just wail out like Metallica drums. But then as I got into high school, the uniforms for color guard were cuter, and being highly motivated by vanity and cute boys, I switched to color guard so I could be in the cuter spangly uniforms that some of you have seen. So I switched to color guard because the cute spangly uniforms, the band uniforms, were wool and big and bulky, and I didn't like them. So then I switched to color guard, and then my water polo coach made me quit. So then by my senior year of high school, it was just water polo, and then college was water polo until I got hurt. So, and that story picks up in my TEDx talk. So with all of that, you don't like blowing on things. Well, certain things. Look, man, there was no way I was going to be a brass player with the spit traps. And I can't even talk about it with spit traps. I was definitely not a woodwind girl. Nope. Drums for me. If I was going to play an instrument, it was going to be with my hands. So with all of that, did you see The Witness of Depp v. Heard published 3 months ago? Confused. Teresa, I don't know what that's regarding. Emily, what do you think about Terry's lawyers preventing Paltrow's kids from testifying on Monday? I don't think Terry's lawyers did that. Will Apple, Brad, and Moses still be called at some point? Seems unfair. They flew in and his side hogged the time. And trials are dynamic. Trials go overtime. I think assuming that they can come in like a 3-hour window is unrealistic for trial. I think that's not on Terry's lawyers. I think that's more on Paltrow's lawyers. We could all read the room on Friday that they weren't getting to them on Monday and they had the weekend to recalibrate. The family could recalibrate and not have come up on Monday and have come up a different day. However, they have said that they are going to have the transcripts of their deposition read in. I think having live witnesses is better if you can, and they might change that because it is her family and they might be able to do it. So we will see what they decide to do. With all of that, Law Nerds, I'm going to go get some lunch. Thank you for being here. Thank you for making this your number one place to watch live trials. I always have so much fun with y'all. Really do. Lindsay asked about Terry Sanderson's daughters. I don't know. One was 9 years younger, but they never really clarified. I don't know if they are sisters or half sisters. So I don't think it was ever addressed to my memory. The VA 8-ball Not for nothing, but Owen is giving off all the vibes of the inept defense attorney and my cousin Betty. Your Honor, I'm not complaining, he says as he's literally sitting there complaining. There's a difference because when James asks questions, he's like, Your Honor, for clarification, this and that, and we're making headway. When Owens puts stuff on the record, it very much is just like, Your Honor, they're touching me. It's a different demeanor, and I think the court has gotten a little tired of Owen's demeanor. And with all of that, Law Nerds, thank you for being here. I will see you after lunch. This stream will populate into that stream if you want to go chat, and I will see you then. So with all of it, thank you for being here. Thank you for being a Law Nerd. Stay in the loop at Law Nerds Alerts. I'll see you after lunch. And if it gets into boring medical testimony, we might break early so we can get some stuff done. We might just have to. All right, bye. You can find all the Law Nerd goodies at lawnerdshop.com. Connect with me on social media at the Emily D. Baker. And don't forget to check out my podcasts, The Emily Show, and the new podcast, Quick Bits, summarizing everything I talk about on my Tuesday and Thursday live streams. You know, when you only have time for just the quick bits.